How to Get Laid, Part 2, The Mechanics and the Outer Game, the Techniques. This is what you've been waiting for. But make sure you go watch Part 1 for the foundation, the theory, the overview. So everything I'm going to be talking about here has been rigorously field tested by myself and by other guys for thousands of hours, for years and for decades. So this stuff definitely works. And the way you can know if it works is by going out and field testing it yourself. By all means, don't believe anything that I say as gospel. Go try it and see what girls actually respond to positively versus negatively. If you do that a lot, well, you'll realize that the things I'm talking about here are quite accurate. So again, to sort of put this in a bigger picture understanding, let's clearly explain what game is not and what game is, because there's a lot of misconceptions about this. So what game is not? Game is not about tricking women into sleeping with you. Game is not about using canned pickup lines. Game is not about being fake. What game is? Game is learning how to approach. Just doing a solid, direct, confident, natural-looking approach requires a lot of practice and experience. Women don't seem to understand this. Women just expect men to be able to approach in a smooth way, like from birth. No, this takes thousands of approaches to be able to do a very smooth, natural, effortless approach for most guys, especially those guys who are sort of antisocial and who don't have a lot of experience socializing. Game is also learning how to flirt, how to be playful, and how to be emotional. One of the biggest problems that us guys have is that we're very logical, especially those of us who have logical careers where we are doing philosophy, computer science, programming, engineering, lawyers, doctors. Actually, some of the best provider guys, the guys who have some of the best jobs, who make some of the best money, business guys, entrepreneurs. Women would love to date these guys. The problem is that these guys are so logical that the woman can't connect with them emotionally, and so these guys generally don't know how to flirt. So learning how to be emotional with women right off the bat, this is one of the biggest aspects of game that you got to master. Another aspect is learning wit and verbal skills. Now, this is closely connected to flirting, but how to be witty and how to have good verbal skills. This is something that a lot of men lack. And this holds you back from being able to attract the quality women that you want. Women are very unforgiving when it comes to your verbal skills. You might be an awesome guy in all other respects. You might have a great career. You might work out. You might be very healthy. You might be into spirituality and all that stuff. But if you don't have the right verbal skills, you're not going to attract her. In a certain sense, this is very shallow of women to judge a guy so harshly on verbal skills alone, because, verbal skills, if you think about it, you don't necessarily need great verbal skills to be successful in life. Now, of course, it's helpful, but there are many jobs where verbal skills are not that important. But women predominantly judge you on first appearances and your verbal skills. So this needs to be developed. Another aspect of game is learning how to be highly social and calibrated. Just being the kind of guy who can walk into a room and schmooze with everybody, small talk with everybody in an easy, effortless way. This is difficult for many of us introverts, but this is highly attractive to women, and it's necessary in order to, just to talk to a lot of them. And also becoming very calibrated. What this means is that you need to gain a deep enough base of experience to the point where you can understand the subtle cues that women are sending you. See, women are very implicit rather than explicit. They don't tell you exactly what they're feeling, what they're thinking many times, why they like you or why they don't like you. And a lot of times women will send you mixed signals, or they'll give you very subtle social cues. But if you lack the necessary experience, then you're going to misread those cues. You're going to miss those cues. You're not going to know, does she like me or not? Does she not like me or not? Does she like it when I touch her? Is she ready to be kissed? Is she ready to follow me home to my bedroom? Like, how do you know these things? Well, the only way you can know these things is by reading subtle cues, because you can't explicitly ask her, like, well, Are you going to have sex with me? You can't ask a woman that, even though she might want that, you see? But you can't make it explicit. And the problem for us very logical men is that we tend to be simple-minded. We want things to just be clear and explicit. We don't like these sorts of like games that women play where they're sending us little subtle, signals, but we don't really know what it means. So you have to become the kind of guy who can read those cues, who's very socially experienced to do that. The only way you can read those cues is through lots and lots of trial and error and social experience. And then once you're calibrated in that way, then you can be smooth and natural. Until then, it's going to be very awkward. So this is calibration. This is a huge component of game, calibration. Everything you do, every technique you use or whatever, every mechanic, it has to be suited to the woman. You have to be responding spontaneously to how she's feeling, right? Like you might want to physically escalate on her, give her a hug, but then if you give her a hug and she gives you a cold look, you got to be able to be wise enough to say, okay, so that hug wasn't done at the appropriate time. I have to warm her up first a little bit before I can hug her again or whatever. You see? And a lot of guys are missing that. Another aspect of real game is being smooth and natural, making women feel comfortable around you. You can think of game as just like removing all the awkwardness from meeting a stranger and getting romantic with a stranger quickly. Usually there's a sort of an awkwardness when you meet somebody new. And a lot of times for most people who are inexperienced, it can take days and weeks of interacting with somebody new, a stranger, to make them feel like a friend. Well, game is about befriending somebody very quickly. And in fact, you can use these skills not just to befriend women, but to befriend men. Once you learn these skills, you'll be able to sit, for example, in an airplane and just schmooze with the guy sitting next to you, for example, for a few hours, and he's going to like become your best friend using these skills. Like very, very quickly, he'll turn into your best friend. Just talking with him in a sort of a smooth, natural way, but very socially calibrated, and making him feel comfortable and making the woman feel comfortable. And of course, a big component of this is making her feel comfortable with your physical touch. So a big aspect of game is learning smooth physical escalation. How do you start to physically touch a woman quickly after meeting her in such a way that doesn't creep her out and it feels totally natural and normal to her, and in fact, it puts a smile on her face and she loves it? How do you do that? That takes practice and some theory. Another big aspect of game is learning how to deal with logistical problems. This is a huge aspect of game. In a sense, this is the biggest aspect you deal with after you get your verbals down and you're able to approach. Then it's all about handling the logistics, because women will throw a lot of logistical obstacles to you. There will be her friends you have to deal with. She's going to have work in the morning. She's going to have various kinds of excuses for why she can't be with you and all this sort of stuff. And you have to deal with that. And figuring out how do you get to her place? How do you get her to your place? How do you make her comfortable about all that so it doesn't seem creepy or weird or awkward? Another aspect of real game is busting your negative limiting beliefs and just building core inner confidence in yourself. Starting to feel like you're an attractive guy, starting to feel like you're not a loser, you're not a loner, and that when you go into a club or a bar or any kind of social environment, you feel like you're coming from a place of high self-esteem. You don't feel like you're some sort of wallflower or you're the odd one out, but you feel like you can be the center of the room. You can hold attention and you're comfortable with that. So that's a lot of the inner game stuff we talked about in part one. And the final aspect of game is, and this is sort of an advanced aspect, it's finding your authentic style of game. It's not about copying me or some other pickup artist or whatever out there and using his techniques. You got to ultimately find what is the most natural and congruent way for you to express your romantic feelings towards a woman. Let's say you're sitting at a coffee shop and you see a beautiful woman walk in, and like, to you, it's almost like love at first sight. Like you really feel like there might be some connection there. Now, of course, it's just based on physical appearance, but sometimes you get that sort of like love at first sight sense. But then you're sitting there and you're all in your head about, well, how do I approach her? What do I say to her? What kind of style should I use? Should I be physical? Should I be loud and obnoxious? Should I be quiet? Should I be cool? Should I be chill? Like, what style do I use, right? And then what verbals do I say? Do I just copy some line I heard somewhere on the internet? But see, that's not authentic to you. So when I first began learning game, one of the mistakes that I made is I didn't realize how important it was to find my own unique style of game. And so I would use various lines, or I would use the style of other guys, not realizing that they don't fit my style. So if you're more introverted, if you're more low energy, you got to find a style that suits that. You can't just be copying high energy extroverts, because then when you try to pull that off, it's not going to be congruent. It's not going to be natural. And she's going to feel that from you and she won't get attracted to you. So ultimately, the deepest aspect of game, and probably the most rewarding, is finding your own personality. And that takes work. It takes a lot of practice to find your own unique personality and to be able to express yourself. Now, a lot of women actually recognize this. And if you ask a woman, like, for some dating advice, she's going to say something like, hey, you don't need all this complicated theory and all these techniques, all this pickup stuff. All you need to do is just be yourself. That's what women will tell you. That's their number one dating advice. Just be yourself. And of course, they're right. Where they're wrong, though, is that they don't understand how difficult it is to be yourself. They say that as though that's easy and that comes with no practice. No, that requires thousands of hours of practice for many guys to be yourself, just to be yourself. In the end, at the very end of this game journey, learning game, you're just going to be yourself. But you're going to be like your highest self, not your weak, little pathetic, inexperienced self, right? Your most confident self, your most experienced self, your most mature self, your most conscious self, the self that has really gone deeply inward and kind of smoothed out your various rough edges. The not awkward, not shy, not fearful self, but the confident, bold self with high self-esteem. Your own self-love will shine through you, which right now you're rusty with. That's going to take some years for you to discover what your authentic style is. You don't even know that yet because you're so inexperienced. It's sort of like if you're trying to become an author or a filmmaker. For you to really be at the peak of your game as a filmmaker or a musician, for example, you need to find your authentic style. And you would think that, well, that's easy. You should be able to do that as just a newbie. But no, for a filmmaker or a musician to really find their style, that can take years of exploration. You can make films, and every film you make, it doesn't quite align with what you really wanted to say as a creator. It can take years and decades to really hit your stride and find out what is the unique creative vision that you're offering with your work. Likewise, what are you really offering to the woman in terms of your energy, your masculinity, finding that core? That is true game. And that is what women find highly attractive, and it's very rare within men, because most men have not done the work to find their authentic style. And don't think of it as a style of game. Think of it more a style of expressing your romantic feelings towards a woman. Because you're a guy, it doesn't matter whether you have game or don't have game. The fact is you have romantic feelings towards women if you're a heterosexual guy with a normal, healthy, hormone system. You have romantic feelings towards women, but the problem is that you don't know how to express them in an authentic way because you're afraid she's going to reject you. You're afraid you're going to look creepy. You're afraid your friends will judge you. You're afraid you're going to screw it up. And so you might want to escalate on a woman. You might want to kiss a woman, but then you're afraid. It's like, she likes me. I like her. Should I kiss her now or should I wait an hour and kiss her later? What if it goes awkward? What if she rejects me? Right? So at the end of this game journey, you're going to clear all that up to the point where when you really feel genuine attraction towards a woman and you want to kiss her, you're just going to go and kiss her, and it's going to be no hesitation, and it's going to be smooth and effortless, and she's going to respond in kind very well because of the confidence with which you express your authentic passion towards her. And then your passion towards her will turn into her passion towards you, and it's going to turn into a beautiful romance. You see, but this takes a lot of practice. This is not effortless. It's not natural to begin with. Now, let's also address this point again of, but Leo, isn't pickup creepy? Because this keeps coming up. Look, being naturally social, flirty, and fun, and charismatic isn't seen as creepy at all by other people. It's highly attractive. It's just seen as a charming, extroverted guy. But if you take a guy who doesn't naturally have these to begin with, or he has lack of experience and therefore is deficient in this department, and you try to teach him the skills, society and people will look at you and look at that whole situation and say, oh, that's creepy. Because they expect you to be able to either naturally be good at this, or if you suck at it, then just keep sucking at it for the rest of your life. They don't give you the leeway to actually practice this stuff and to become non-creepy. It's like either you're classified as a creepy guy or a cool guy and nothing in between, and there's nothing you can do to turn from a creepy guy into a cool guy. In fact, if a creepy guy tries to turn into a cool guy, that is creepy. And that's what makes you a creep, and you will forever be a creep. That's how society and women tend to look at this situation. But of course, we need a solution where we can turn creepy guys into cool guys. How do you do that? Well, through this process that I'm teaching here. You see, the problem here is that human sexuality, because it is so linked to survival, it's so central to our survival, and it's coded so deeply into our subconscious minds that for most people, sex and dating is totally unconscious. They take no responsibility for how sex happens. Most people do not consciously go about saying like, okay, I suck at sex, I suck at flirting, I suck at dating, I suck at kissing, whatever, and I'm going to deliberately, consciously practice these things and become good at this. When you try to do that, very oddly, society looks at you like you're a creep. But actually, you're doing the right thing. You're taking responsibility. You're taking ownership of the problem rather than just letting it happen however it happens. And so one of the challenges that women have in understanding this whole process of getting better with women, the reason a lot of times they don't understand it is because I notice that a lot of women simply don't take any responsibility at all for sex. They're just operating completely on autopilot. Now, a lot of guys do that too. Even a lot of sort of so-called natural guys who are good with women, it's just like they're on autopilot. And so what ultimately you will find is that most people in life are on autopilot about everything, not just dating, but about their finances, their family situation, their marriage, their children, their business, their career. Everything's on autopilot. Everything's unconscious. And then teaching a person how to make it conscious, when you first try to make it conscious, it's a little bit awkward and weird. There's effort involved. It can be seen as try hard. You are a try hard. You're trying hard to improve. And it takes a lot of work because there's a steep learning curve within all these different domains to improve on all these things. But what people don't realize is that after years of effort, eventually it becomes natural, it becomes second nature, it becomes effortless. And then when people interact with you, they say, oh, Leo, you were always this very charismatic person. You were always extroverted. You always had this great speaking ability and these great verbal skills, and you were always good at flirting, and you always had a good sense of humor, and you were always intelligent, and you were always very conscious. And it's like, no, I wasn't. That required enormous work. You just don't see the work. You're seeing the tip of the iceberg. You're seeing the results. You're not seeing the work that I do behind the scenes. And the work that I do behind the scenes, a lot of times it's ugly, it's painful, it's brutally, emotionally challenging, and most people aren't doing it. And that's why, of course, most people are mediocre, and this is how you rise up out of mediocrity. But be careful, because a lot of people, as you're trying to rise up out of mediocrity and to improve yourself, they're going to just call you a tryhard. Or they're going to call you weird. Or they're going to say, oh, stop doing that. You don't need to do that. That's so unnatural. Not understanding that natural is something you develop. There's nothing natural about knowing mathematics. There's nothing natural about reading. There's not even anything natural about like writing. A lot of the stuff we learn, most of the stuff we learn in school is highly unnatural. The only reason it feels natural to you is because you've gone through 12 years of schooling, drilling that shit into your mind, and now it's very natural to you. And it just seems like, oh, it's all effortless. But it wasn't effortless. When you were learning language, when you were learning to write and to read and to do math and to do long division, this was highly unnatural, painful, difficult stuff, if you think back to your school days. And so it is with learning to flirt with women. All right, so step number one for this is, now we're getting into the outer game. You need to find the best locations for approaching women. in your city. Bars, clubs, malls, shopping centers, cafes, colleges, streets, parks, whatever. You need to do some research. Spend the next month researching these areas. That means you got to pull up Google Maps, find the densest population areas where people hang out, where there are women in your city, and visit these areas. Make a whole list of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 different areas in your city where approaching might be possible. And then you have to drive there, walk there, explore the area, and look. Are there women there? When are the best times? Is it during the evening? Is it during the afternoon? During the weekdays? During the weekends? You got to figure all this shit out and make a list of your locations. This in and of itself simply holds a lot of guys back. They just don't know the best locations in their city for doing approaching. And if you don't have good locations, then you're not going to be motivated to approach. You're not even going to know where to go to approach. You need to make this conscious and deliberate. Don't just expect some beautiful woman as you're going to McDonald's to be there sitting at the table waiting for you. She's not going to be there. You need to go where the women are, and you got to research that. And if you don't have these areas in your city, then it's time to move cities. And in fact, this is one of the biggest things and best things you can do for your game is move to a big city where there are places where lots of beautiful women congregate and there is high volume and abundance rather than scarcity. If you really want to learn game, this is what you must do. Now, at first, you're going to have excuses for why you can't move. Leo, I got a job, I got a career, I can't move, I can't afford it, I don't want to do it, it's a hassle, I got a house, I got an apartment, I just renewed my lease. These are all excuses. How badly do you want to get good with women? What you should realize is that it's worth moving. Even if you have to break your lease, even if you have to sell your house, it's worth it. Why do you want to live in such a lame city where there are not the abundance of women and the quality of women that you want? Why are you living in this city? You can find a new job. You could find a way to transfer yourself. Somehow you can make it work. If not immediately, then within 6 months, within a year or so forth. I literally broke my lease when I was in Dallas because I was so serious about this and I wanted to move to Vegas. I literally broke my lease halfway through. I paid a penalty of several $1,000s. Then I paid an additional several $1,000s just in relocation expenses to relocate. I had to pay a slightly higher rent because in Dallas I lived with a roommate, and then in Vegas I didn't have a roommate. I lived by myself. So my rent was a little bit higher, and it was a hassle to move all my stuff, drive all the way there, do all this, but at the same time it was also exciting. And actually, moving cities is one of the best things you can do for your personal development. Because once you get stuck in a city for too long, you fall into a rut. It's good to move around every 5-10 years, move to a new city. Experience life in a different city, experience different city cultures. This is good for you, aside from what it does for your dating life. Now, what are the best cities you can move to for game? Well, of course, very much depends on where you live around the world. Many of you guys live in different countries, on different continents. But if we're talking about the United States, the best cities are New York, Las Vegas, Miami, Austin, LA. If we're talking about internationally, just look at the biggest cities. London, for example, is great. There are many big cities in Europe that would be great, and in Spain, maybe in Germany, maybe in the Scandinavia, you can find big cities with opportunities. As far as in Asia, I'm less familiar with the scene there, but just, basically you're looking for the most dense metro areas, essentially, with a good nightlife, and also hopefully with a good, cafes, streets, bars during the day, shopping centers, malls, college campuses, this sorts of stuff. So ideally you pick a city that has great night game and day game opportunities. Of course, living in a big city is more expensive, although some big cities, you can find affordable big cities. You can have roommates, rather than focusing on all the reasons why you can't do it, focus on how can I do it? because I need to do it. And what you'll realize is that moving to a big city like this, if you're trying to learn this skill set, is one of the most important things, the single most important thing you can do. So do it. Do it if you're serious. And if you don't want to move, then you're not serious. In which case, you probably shouldn't even be learning this skill set, because the only way you're going to get payoff for learning this skill set is if you're serious. This is not a joke here. This is not something you dabble in. This is something you do seriously. And you commit a significant chunk of your life to, at least for a few years, to get good at it. Now let's talk about the difference between day game and night game. What does this mean? Well, day game just means gaming during the day. Night game means gaming during the night. The key difference is that during night game, there's going to be alcohol. We're talking about bars and clubs mostly. During day game, we're talking about things like college campuses, sidewalks, shopping malls, cafes, this sort of stuff. There are some important differences between the two. During night game, what's great about it is that you can get a lot of approaches in. The volume, the abundance is what's great about night game. Also, the fact that people are drinking, this does help. It loosens people up. It's a more high energy environment. This also means that you can get away with a lot more than what you can with during the day. You can be less socially calibrated. So this is great for newbies who are still kind of socially awkward. People will tolerate you a lot better at night than they will during the day. During the day, you have to be very, very socially calibrated and sort of like chill. At night, you can practice more ballsy approaches. You can practice physical escalation a lot more. There's a lot more girls to approach. They're a little bit looser. They're a little bit less in the logical mode of thinking that they are during the day, and they are more in the party mode that they are during the night. Now, one of the downsides is that if you're a low energy person, then you might not actually like that, because your low energy game is not going to be enough to get the attention of girls who are, drinking and dancing and stuff at night. But also, what's so powerful about night game is that this is where you cut your teeth. This is where you really learn, because these are some of the most difficult situations. You're in a very loud club. There's a lot of girls. They're dressed up. Some of them are very beautiful, very intimidating. What's great is that you have a lot of targets, a lot of opportunities. And if you get a blowout, it's not a big deal. You can just move on to the next one. And also, of course, with night game, since it is nighttime, you have a chance of actually pulling the girl home or going to her place and making something happen exactly that night. With day game, I actually love day game. Day game is amazing. It sort of suits my personality better than night game. I've done a lot of both. Of course, I've done a lot more night game just because there's a lot more volume at night. During the day game, the biggest problem that I find is that it's difficult to find in most cities an area where there are lots of attractive women that you can approach during the day. Usually, if I do day game, it's like I approach 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 women in a span of a few hours. Like let's say you go to a very busy mall. Even at a very busy mall, there's a lot of women there, but the number of women you would actually want to approach and date is going to be quite few. At least it is for me. I have pretty high standards. And there's just not that many beautiful women walking around all dressed up, during the day. And what I find during the day is that you have to do a pretty direct approach. And I want it to be an honest, genuine approach such that if I'm directly approaching a woman at a mall during the day, I have to be genuinely attracted to her. And that, to me, that's just pretty rare. That's not very common. Even if I go out deliberately and spend 3 hours at the mall walking around, I'm only going to see a handful, probably 3 or less women that I would be genuinely attracted to and want to date. And so this does present a problem because it is difficult just to gain enough approach experiences just from day game. Really, to get good at day game, because I was doing a lot of night game, that helped me then to translate those skills into day. But if I was only doing day game, I would not have enough experience. And so I'm assuming you're going to run into the same problem. But, some cities are really good for that. For example, New York, LA, London, these cities Very large cities can present amazing day game opportunities, maybe even better than night game. Now, what's great about day game, though, is that women are much less approached during the day than at night. At night, they're getting hit on by drunk guys all the time, and it's kind of cliche to hit on them. But during the day, a guy who can do a very smooth, natural, easy approach on a beautiful woman during the day, this is pretty rare. And then flirt with her, this is pretty rare. So if you have that kind of skill set, you're definitely going to make a very good impression on her. And you're going to need a lot fewer approaches during the day than at night to actually make something happen. Now, another problem with day game is that it's rather unrealistic to pull a girl home and sleep with her the same day during day game. Usually during the day, women are more logical. They're not in a party mode. They're also usually busy. They're going somewhere. They have plans. And usually you don't have a lot of time to talk with them. Usually, even if you're lucky, a girl will give you 5-10 minutes of her time during the day, and then she has to run off somewhere. So this is not ideal. At night, what's awesome is that you can hook a set. You can talk to a girl for hours, for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. This gets you an enormous amount of experience talking, flirting, laughing, having fun, dancing, this sort of stuff. You can do that for 3 hours with one girl in one night. You can't gain that same level of experience during day game. So anyways, these are some of the pros and cons. Actually, I find day game, I would prefer to do day game if there was enough girls around to do it with. Because actually I'm not like that interested in one night stands. From day game, you're not going to be getting so many one night stands. You're going to be basically collecting phone numbers and setting up a lot of dates. And so I actually prefer that. I think most women prefer that too, because most women, if you think about it, like if her mom or her dad asks, well, how did you meet your boyfriend? And she's going to say, would she rather say, well, this charming guy, chatted me up at the mall? Or would she say, oh, I was drunk and having, fun with my girlfriends, and then this guy pulled me home from a bar or from a club? Which one does she want to say how she met you? It's going to be from a day game approach. It's more socially acceptable than it is, partying at a nightclub. Although really, if what you're looking for is the most sex, you're going to get that from night game. So now let's move on to how to actually do an approach. How to approach a girl. We're going to go step by step in sort of the right order that you need to do it in. So the first thing you got to do before you even approach her is you got to scan her up and down, really look at her, look her face, look at her body, and ask yourself, how much do I like her? Is there a genuine attraction there? And believe it or not, this actually takes some skill and some practice. I remember I would actually go to malls and I would walk around a mall just looking at hundreds of women walking by, like a very busy mall on a weekend. And I wouldn't even approach. I would just look and I would just scan girls and say, would I sleep with her? And how confident am I that I want to sleep with her? And I would do nothing else. And I would just scan hundreds of girls like this just to build my internal radar system for what I actually want in a girl physically. Because us guys, we're very physically oriented when it comes to our initial attraction towards a girl. Now, of course, I'm not saying personality is not important and other factors aren't important. They are. But when you're first making your approach, you got no idea of her personality. You got no idea about her career or whether she's spiritual or she's a drug addict. You don't know anything. She could be an alcoholic. You don't know. How do you know who you approach? Well, you got to approach a girl that you're genuinely attracted to, at least during the day. Now, during the night, maybe you can do some warm-up approaches on girls you're not really interested in just to socialize. You can do that too. But like, for example, during the day, if I'm approaching a girl, I have to be sure that I genuinely like her, because when I open her directly, I'm going to do a direct open. Like, I'm going to be complimenting her, and I'm more than just a compliment. I'm going to be in a frame of mind where I am attracted to her, and I want that energy to be communicated authentically to her. If I think she's adorable, I have to feel she's adorable, and I have to say that to her, right? If I'm saying it, I have to feel it. Otherwise, there's going to be incongruence there, and she'll sense that. And there's a difference, some girls, for example, I find them adorable. Other girls, I find them cute. Other girls, I find them sexy. Other girls, I find them beautiful. And depending on like those little subtle distinctions, I will compliment her or open her in that way. And if I don't, it's gonna come out awkward. So find out what your type is. Does she have to be tall, short? What do you care about? Different guys have very different standards for what they want in women. So part of this journey for you is finding out what you really want in a woman. What is your dream woman? And also, you have to find that point where you see a girl and then you're a little bit attracted, but you're not sufficiently attracted. And in that case, you have to say, no, I'm not going to approach her. I'm not willing to sleep with her. And then that's that. It's actually very helpful to be clear and kind of binary, like up or down, yes or no. Would I actually want to sleep with her? Would I enjoy that? Would that make me satisfied? If it's yes, then you do an approach. And if no, then don't do the approach. Now, again, there are some exceptions here in terms of like when you're first starting off and maybe you don't have a lot of beautiful women around you, you might want to lower your standards a little bit just to gain some experience. And if you're at night, during the nighttime, you can also lower your standards a bit just because you're socializing. You're not necessarily, for example, doing a direct approach on every girl. If you're just doing an indirect approach and you're just socializing, you're just talking shit and just having fun and kind of partying, then you don't need to do this. But like during the day, you want to do this. Also, the next step is don't overthink it. So you're going to go into your head and start to think of like, oh no, I don't know what to say. Should I approach now? Should I wait? She's on her phone. Oh no, what do I do? You have to basically shut off your mind and clear your mind of all thoughts, all these sorts of doubts that you have. Does she have a boyfriend? Does she have a husband? Oh no. Cut all that shit off. And then you walk straight to her. Don't delay. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Walk straight to her. You're definitely going to feel anxiety and fear as you're doing this because you're not going to know what to say. You're not going to know how she's going to react. You don't know if she has a boyfriend or whatever. But you push yourself to approach her. And then the next step is you get her attention firmly. This is not even the opener yet. This is just getting her attention. So it's very important that you don't do half-ass approaches. This is a big mistake that newbies make is they try to do a meek 50% or 80% approach. You have to do 100% approach. That means you're clear with yourself you're approaching her right now, and she's going to be clear that you approached her. There's not going to be any ambiguity of like, what does this guy want? Does he want to talk to me or not? Is he going to talk or not? Did he touch me or not? It's like, no, you're approaching her directly. And you get her attention. And usually the way you get her attention is just saying something like, hey, and a pause. Hey, excuse me, and a pause. That pause is crucial. Before you can start running some game on her or even giving her some line or some opener or giving her a compliment about how beautiful she is, first you get her attention. Hey, excuse me, can I stop you for a moment? And then have her stop. If she's walking, stop her. And then a silence. And then eye contact. Make strong eye contact and silence. The mistake that newbies make here is that it's like, hey, excuse me, I thought you were beautiful. No. First, you get her attention, right? Especially like during the day, she's off in her own world, thinking about her own chores she's got to do. She's walking through the mall shopping and thinking about something else. You're about to hit on her. That's a very different frame of mind, right? So you got to give her a little bit of time to adjust to what's happening here. She doesn't know who you are. You could be trying to sell her something. You could be trying to sell her, Mormonism or religion or a cult or some sort of, product at the mall or whatever. She doesn't know who you are or what you want. So, hey, excuse me, stop. Strong eye contact, a pause, get her attention, and of course, crucially, you smile. Hey, excuse me, stop. Smile. I'm not doing it so well right now. It's a little bit of a fake smile. But you smile. Because what you'll find is that when you stop a girl like that, a lot of times she gets a little bit scared or freaked out because she doesn't know what's happening. So you got to smile to reassure her that there's no threat or danger to her. Once you got all that down, now you can deliver your opener. And what should your opener be? This is where a lot of guys screw up, is that they spend a lot of time overthinking what the right opener should be, as though looking for the perfect opener is the thing that's going to get you laid. It won't. This is a huge mistake. It doesn't really matter what your opener is. Your opener can literally be almost anything. I'll give you a very simple one here in a second, But I want you to understand that the opener is not important, because the opener just gets the conversation going. The real bitch is keeping the conversation going. That's what's really difficult. And then eventually leading it somewhere more serious than just conversation. So most of game is not in the opener. Don't get overly preoccupied about the opener. So a standard opener that I like to use, which is very effective during day game, although, hey, you can use it during night game as well, is you stop her, you get the eye contact and all that, and then you tell her, hey, I know this is very forward, but I just saw you and I felt very attracted. I wanted to come over and speak to you. Something along those lines. Or it's like, hey, excuse me, I know this is random, but I find you cute. I found you cute as you were walking by. And I would regret it if I didn't come talk to you. Hi, my name is Leo. What's your name? And this gets the conversation going. Something like that. This is a very standard, very straightforward, very direct, very honest sort of opener if you're genuinely attracted to her. And maybe there's something you like about her. You can customize the opener a little bit more if you get more advanced. Like maybe you like her sense of style, her dress. Maybe you like her hair. Ask yourself before you approach her, like, what is it about her that made you attracted to her? Now, if it's something like her tits, then you probably don't want to mention that. But, if you can find sort of a non-sexual thing about her that attracted you to her, then you can say that. It's like, I saw your hair and I thought it was really beautiful. I like your sense of style, and then describe her style to her. Or maybe it's more of a, like, you can even do an opener where it's like, you say like, look, I saw you walking by. I know this is kind of crazy, but like, and I don't even know how to put my finger on it, but something about you, your energy, I felt very attracted by your energy. Something like that. Like that can be sort of, it's kind of vague, And a lot of times for us guys, it is like that. We see a girl and it's like, we don't exactly know what we like about her, what we find attractive about her, but just holistically, like something draws us to her. And you can literally say that to her as the opener. Of course, introduce yourself, have her introduce you, herself to you, and then get the conversation going. The next step is to be very at ease and relaxed. This is crucial, because when you first start doing these approaches, you're going to be so scared, you're going to be so anxious and tense. And the problem is that any anxiety or fear within you is going to translate to her. She's going to see it and read it in your eyes. And you might have a very stiff posture and body language. So you have to learn to just relax and be at ease and very chill, especially if this is a daytime approach. You want to be super at ease so that she feels completely disarmed and relaxed, because you're completely disarmed and relaxed and you're not nervous, you're not stuck in your head, you're not mumbling. Now, of course, when you first start doing this, you're going to be very nervous and mumbly and all this sorts of stuff, and you'll get plenty of blowouts. But as you practice it more, you're going to get better. The next thing you want to do is you want to be very happy and playful. You want to be coming from a happy place, not some depressed place. Be happy, be there to have fun with her. It's a frame of mind that you teach yourself to enter into. You also want to be as genuine and honest as possible about your feelings, your intentions, and so forth. The next step is, rather than asking her a bunch of interview questions about what do you do and where are you from and this sorts of stuff, it's better to make statements about her and make informed guesses. For example, just by looking at her, she might be standing there in a certain kind of dress with a certain kind of hairstyle. Maybe she has some tattoos. Maybe she has some piercings. Maybe she's carrying a bag from a store where she just bought something. You can make statements and inferences based on that. So this is very observational, and it's very dependent upon the specific girl you're opening. So she might be standing there with a certain, bag from a certain store. Maybe she's standing there with a bag from the Apple store. And then you make some assumptions, or you maybe tease her a little bit based upon the fact that she has a, Apple store bag in her hand. What does that mean about her? Or she has a certain dress. Maybe she's dressed in all black, or maybe she has a very flowery dress. What does that mean about her? So you can make statements, and your statements, they don't even have to make much sense. You can look at her and you can kind of do like a cold read and say, you look like the kind of girl that is interested in, you look like you have a very corporate look about you. Do you work in corporate? See, that's a statement rather than a question. A question would be like, where do you work? That's not so good because that puts you into a very logical interview mode. Whereas if you make a statement or an assumption about her, that's a lot more interesting to her and it'll get her to engage more emotionally. You can also make like more humorous, joking types of statements about her. Maybe she has sort of a little bit of a hippie vibe going and you might say, oh, you like to smoke that weed, don't you? I get that sense from you. And see, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Maybe she's never smoked weed in her life. But the fact that you say that, now this gets her more like interested because you see, that's not just a logical, boring interview question. That's like an assumption you made about her. Now she wants to know, why do you think I smoke weed? Or maybe she says, yes, I do. And then you can connect on that and you might say, oh, I smoke weed too. Or you might say, oh, weed, that's bad for you, girl. You know, something like that. And then you can tease her on that or whatever. Or you might say, well, I don't smoke weed, but I like psychedelics. And then you can get into the conversation of psychedelics. Like that. And then see, very quickly, then you can go into like a deep territory rather than just asking her questions about like, what do you do for work? How old are you? Where'd you go to school? Stuff like that. For example, you can make assumptions about her, what you think her major is. Like, oh, you look like you're a psychology major. Or you look like you're a communications major or a philosophy major or whatever. And you don't have to be right. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. It's going to be more interesting either way than asking questions. So make sure that you're not being too logical, but rather you're trying to be as emotional as possible with her. Communicate with her on an emotional level, on a more intimate level. If you're going to ask her questions, ask her more interesting, more intimate questions than questions like, where do you work? For example, you can ask her the question of like, what are you most passionate about in life? See, that's a much more interesting question. Or what do you like most about yourself? That's a much more interesting question. Like nobody in the last month has asked her that question. You see, and then when she gives you some response, you can take that response, you can riff on it. You can either tease based on it, or you can actually learn something about her and kind of find a common connection between you two. Like maybe what she likes about herself is her generosity. And then you might say, oh, that's interesting. You know, I find that same quality, for example, in my mother. But the problem is that maybe she's too generous, and then it feels like she's not doing enough for herself because she's being too selfish, or selfless rather. And then the girl could say, oh yeah, I'm like that too, right? And then now you got something to talk about. That's not just some boring work topic. Next, you want to start to flirt. I'm giving you just broad strokes here. I'm not going to tell you how to flirt exactly here. You're going to have to learn that, but you have to learn to flirt, and you're going to have to exhibit some sexual intent, and you do this through teasing. You never say anything sexual per se, but you tease her and you make her feel like this is not a business interaction. This is not a friendly interaction. You're not asking her for the directions to the nearest Starbucks or to the restroom. That's not what this conversation is about. This is the beginning of a dating opportunity here. That needs to be very clear without actually saying that I want to date you. You practice this more and you get better and better at communicating sexual intent. A lot of sexual intent just has to do with the eye contact and the frame that you're setting here. For example, you might throw out a line such as like, oh, you seem like a troublemaker. You know, she says something and you're like, oh, I can tell you're going to give me trouble. See, just by saying that already, like who says that? She would never hear that in a business conversation. She would never hear that from her mother. She's not going to hear that from some guy selling her some product at the mall. This is obviously a sexual conversation, although very subtly sexual. It's like, oh, you're a troublemaker. And then just pause it like that and then move on to some other topic. Another thing that's very helpful here is act like you're above her. So rather than putting her on a pedestal and assuming that she's the beautiful one and she's the prize, when you're engaging with her, be so confident. Now, this can come off a little bit narcissistic and egotistical, but be so confident that you're just assuming that you're higher value than her, which means like you are bringing the value. You have a lot to offer here. That means you don't have to talk very fast and you don't have to sell yourself to her by telling her all of the great things about you, but rather you assume already that you're a very attractive, highly valuable guy and that she's getting an opportunity to meet you, even though you approached her. That's the kind of frame you want to take. So don't give all your power away. Don't overly compliment her. Give her one compliment. If you say she's cute or she's beautiful or you found her attractive, that's enough. You don't need to keep fawning over her like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. It would be so amazing if I could date you. Please, will you date me? Like, no. The frame needs to be that she would be lucky to date you, even though you opened her. And you're screening her rather than her screening you. So when you're talking with her and finding out about her life and her career and what she's passionate about and all that, you're subtly screening her, like you're judging her in the sense that, like, you know, she might tell you that, I'm into meditation. And then you ask her, oh yeah, what kind of meditation? And then maybe she tells you like she's into something, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then, but you're evaluating, like, maybe she's meditating, but she's a poor meditator. And then you kind of subtly judge her for it and tease her. It's like, are you a good meditator, or you just meditate and actually you're falling asleep when you meditate? It's like, I'm gonna judge the quality of your meditation, girl. I'll teach you how to meditate. See, this frame of like, you're the guy, you're the leader, you know more than her, you're more experienced than her. That's the frame. Now, at first, you might have to fake it till you make it. It might not be true at first, but as you develop your game and you become very confident in yourself, and also you develop your life as well, and you gain more life experience, it's actually going to become true that you're more experienced than her and you're a better leader than her, and she has someone to look up to. That's ultimately what the girl wants. She wants to date a guy she can look up to who is confident, assertive, can lead her, who is a little bit above her in value. Now, next, you want to keep the conversation going as long as possible. Keep talking and talking and talking. Make it as emotional as possible and keep it going as long as possible. During the day, it's probably not going to last more than 5, 10, 15 minutes. At night, it can last a lot longer. Keep plowing, keep plowing. The point is that you want to build a bond between each other. The deeper the bond, the more solid will be the phone number that you get at the end, or the more likely she is to follow you if you're going to bounce her to some new location, grab a drink with her, the more likely she's going to be interested in that. If your conversation is less than 5 minutes, most likely your phone number is going to flake and she's not going to follow you anywhere, and therefore it's not going to go anywhere. It's just a waste of your time. So you keep the conversation going as long as possible, and then at the end, as you're sensing that it's wrapping up, or she tells you that, you know, I got to go, I got a class I got to get to, or I got to get to work or whatever, then you push for, first you try to do an instant date for a coffee or a drink. If she has time, you can convince her to go grab a coffee at the nearby Starbucks. And if you're like at a mall, always know where the Starbucks is, because you're going to try to walk her to the Starbucks and continue talking to her. Sit down, because if you can sit her down for a coffee at a Starbucks at a mall, you can talk with her for 20, 30 minutes there. And that's like a date almost. You're doing an Insta-Date. This is the ideal situation. This is going to be your most solid chance for success with her. But a lot of times, girl will be busy. She's not going to be interested in that. She doesn't have time. Therefore, you grab a number. Take her number, text her the next day, and try to set something up. The problem is that it's going to be very flaky. You're going to have a very high flake rate from these numbers. The flake rate is going to be probably over 70%. That means 70% of girls simply won't respond to you the next day after you get their number. And what that means is that you didn't build a deep enough connection. You weren't emotional with her enough. Or sometimes, you know, you're just not her type. She didn't find you attractive. That happens too. That's okay. Not every girl's going to find you attractive. She might not have been single. One thing that I like to do during the daytime is I will explicitly ask a girl, are you single? And I will ask this within the first 5 minutes of the conversation, because I don't want to waste my time. A lot of times girls will have boyfriends, and I want to know immediately. If she's single, then that's going to end the conversation right. I mean, if she says she's not single, that's going to end the conversation right there during the day. If she says she's single, then first of all, that's very explicit. Like, she knows exactly what you're interested in if you're asking that question. Second of all, it gives you a sense of confidence to know explicitly that she's single. Now she can't give you a sort of a boyfriend excuse later. because she already said she's single. And then that sort of opens the door for you. So don't be afraid to ask a girl if she's single or not. You can do that within 2 minutes of meeting her. And in fact, I usually do that to save myself a lot of wasted time. Because sometimes what happens is you can talk to a girl for 15 minutes and at the end of it, you ask for a phone number. She's like, oh, sorry, I have a boyfriend. It's like, but why the fuck were you talking to me for 15 minutes? Clearly, this was a dating opportunity situation. This was not a business conversation. But sometimes girls will just forget to say they have a boyfriend because they don't want to upset you, or they're afraid that you're gonna get mad or something like that. So just ask them if they're single. So basically, push for a coffee or a drink. Bounce her around if you can. Grab a phone number if you can. And hey, I mean, you can even go for a pull, which means you bounce her for a drink. Then you take that date and you convert it into something else. You can kind of stroll around the mall together. You can do some window shopping together. You can go to stores together. And eventually, you can invite her to your house. That's a little bit difficult to do during the daytime. It's easier during the night. So that is basically how you do an approach and how you convert it into something like a dating situation. Now, all of game can be summed up as follows. Approach, be playful, express your romantic desire so that she's clear about that, so that you're not friend-zoned. Lead her towards a coffee, a drink, walking around, getting an ice cream. Lead her, bounce her to different places. She has to get comfortable following you because eventually she has to follow you to your bedroom. And stay with the girl. Whatever you do, stay with the girl as long as possible. Now, of course, if she tells you to leave, then you leave. You're not going to be a creep who clings on if she's asking you to leave. But as long as she's not asking you to leave, you stay with the girl as long as possible. Literally, and this is a magic line. This magic line will get you laid, especially during night game. The number one strategy for getting laid at night is you find a girl, you approach her, you're playful with her, you express a little bit of your romantic intentions towards her, you move around with her, and then as she's, going with her friends or she's going back home or whatever, here's the magic line you tell her. You say, "Can I come with you?" Wherever she's going, you say, "Can I come with you? Can I come with you?" She says she's going to meet her friends. "Can I come with you?" She says they're going to get a drink. "Can I come with you?" She says they're leaving the club. "Can I come with you?" She says they're going to go grab some food after the club. "Can I come with you?" She says she's going home. "Can I come with you?" She walks into her bedroom. "Can I come with you?" Because by the end of the night, she's going to wind up in bed. She's going to be in somebody's bed, probably her bed. And if you're in her bed, when she's in her bed, this is how you get laid. It's not rocket science. And usually what you'll find is that if a girl is interested in you, a lot of times a girl will be interested in you, but she's a little bit kind of like, she's interested, but she's not going to work very hard to make something happen. She's just interested. But you're going to have to handle all the logistics to make something happen. And sometimes the easiest way to handle logistics is to simply ask, "Can I come with you?" And just go wherever she's going. And a lot of times she'll just say, "Yes, you can come with me." It's like, "We're all getting drinks. We're going to take shots together with my friends." "Great. I'll come with you and I'll take a shot." Okay, once that's done, it's like, "Okay, now we're going for food." "Great. Can I come with you for food? I'll get some food too." "Okay, come on along." Because if she likes you, she's gonna want you to come along. She's enjoying your company. Now, of course, this assumes she's enjoying your company. Now, if she says, "No, I don't like you," then it's over, right? So obviously, you're not trying to be so pushy that you're trying to do something against her will. See, the thing is that girls are not going to lead you to sex. You have to lead them to sex. And there's nothing wrong with that. That can seem like it's kind of creepy, but it's not creepy. It's just that girls are not going to take responsibility for making things happen. You have to do that as the man. And like the easiest way to do that, if you don't want to set up all the logistics yourself, which you should try to do, but if you're kind of lazy or she's not willing to come with you because she's not comfortable enough with you, then just ask her, "Can I come with you?" And a lot of times that will allow you to overcome many of the logistical hurdles. Okay, so here's a sort of a high-level structure of a successful pickup. You approach directly and you grab her attention. Then you deliver your opener. It doesn't matter what the opener is. Literally, the opener can be something as stupid as, I don't know, I hate Facebook. That could be your opener. I mean, like, experiment with stupid, ridiculous, nonsensical openers. It doesn't matter what you open with, because you need to teach yourself that the quality of your opener does not determine whether she's going to like you, get attracted to you, or sleep with you. Stupid openers can work as well as very sophisticated, elaborate openers. And in fact, the more you overthink your opener, the worse it's going to be, the less natural it's going to be. Sometimes go out to the club and just try very stupid openers. Now, during the daytime, you don't want to use very stupid openers. You just want to be more kind of casual and normal and chill and direct and just tell her you saw her and found her attractive. That's enough for a day game opener. During the nighttime, you can experiment with some stupid, obnoxious openers. Man, I mean, I could tell you like really obnoxious openers that I've used and they've hooked really well. So probably the most obnoxious opener I've ever done is actually like a ridiculous opinion opener. But you have to understand, I'm going to tell this to you right now, but you have to understand that I was completely congruent and I was in a very high energy state when I delivered this opener, which is why it worked. You would not want to try this if you're just a newbie and you're scared and you're not going to deliver this congruently. So a lot of the power of the opener is how congruently you can deliver it. So basically the opener that I used, the most obnoxious one I used is something like, there were two ladies sitting at the bar and I would walk up to them and say, hey, ladies, excuse me, I need your opinion on something. What's your opinion on glory holes? Are you for or against? Obnoxious, ridiculous opener. You would not normally want to use this, but you want to experiment a little bit with some obnoxious openers just to see how far you can push it. So now you might think like, oh my God, Leo, this kind of opener, surely they hated you. No. That girl, by the time I finished that opener and then 5 minutes of just plowing with funny shit that I said after the opener, that girl was ready to go home with me after 5 minutes. That's how well that opener worked. But you have to understand, it wasn't the opener that did the magic. It was the energy I brought into it, how congruent I was. This was towards the end of the night, late in the night. I had already done a bunch of approaches and I was just having fun. I was really in a fun mood and I was just joking. And after I delivered that opener, just joke after joke after joke after joke after just plowing her with fucking jokes, right? So what you don't want to do is just walk up cold to two girls sitting at a bar and like, hey ladies, what do you think about glory holes? And then just dead silence. And you don't follow up with anything else and you're not in a fun mood. That's going to be ridiculously creepy. And you'll get immediately blown out. And maybe they'll even call security on you. You don't want to do that. So it's not so much about the opener. It's about the opener and then how you carry yourself after the opener. You have to keep talking. You don't just leave a dead silence after the opener. You have to understand that after you open a girl, she still doesn't know anything about you. And she's not going to be carrying the conversation for you. Your responsibility after the opener is to carry the conversation like 90%, 10%. Maybe even 95%, 5%. That means you're going to be talking 95% of the time. She's going to be listening and she'll be responding 5% of the time. That's during the first few minutes of the interaction. So it's not enough for you to have a great opener. You got to follow that opener up with 95% other verbals to keep it going. You're sort of jump-starting her. Then once you jumpstart her and she's attracted and she's interested and she's having fun, then she'll start asking you questions, she'll start telling you stories, and then it'll become more of an even 50-50 conversation. But don't expect her to carry the conversation in the first few minutes after you open her, because she doesn't like, look, let's say you're walking down the street and I just stop you as a guy. You're a guy and I'm a guy. I just stop you and I say, hey, I really like your hair, man. It's cool. And then I just dead silence. Like that's my opener. And then dead silence. And then I expect you to carry the conversation. See, it's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to carry that conversation because you're not invested in me. You don't know what I want. You're doing your own thing in life. I haven't done anything sufficiently to grab your attention and to make you invested in a conversation. So I would have to Not just tell you like, I'd have to do something like, look, I really like your hair. And then, oh, I saw somebody else, my friend has the same sort of haircut, and then blah, 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 blah. And I have to keep plowing and plowing and plowing and plowing for a few minutes and get you a little bit of a sense of who I am and where I'm coming from and what I'm interested in, my passions are, and so forth. And then you could get invested. If you are interested in this conversation, you could invest and you could start asking me questions. And then it could even out to a 50-50 conversation. And even then I could get you to start asking me and doing most of the talking. But at the beginning of that, I have to plow. It's going to be 95% me talking. So be prepared for that. All of that is just to say that don't overemphasize the opener. So continuing on with the structure of a successful pickup. So you approach directly, grab her attention. You do the opener. Then you do strong eye contact and you square up to her. What does it mean, square up to her? It means that you're face to face rather than like, let's say her face is pointing in this direction and you're standing like at an angle, maybe like this, or you're like this. You want to be face to face and close to her, right? So you're squared up. It's direct. Don't do indirect approaches where you're standing behind her shoulder somehow trying to talk to her, because then she can just like, it's kind of awkward for her to even have her face tilted over her shoulder listening to you, because she's going to get tired. Eventually she can just move her face away from you and cut you off that way. You want to be face to face with her, looking her straight in the eyes. And a lot of sexual intent can be communicated with your eye contact. Work on your eye contact. Next, you want playful flirtation with sexual intent, but you don't want to make sex explicit. So don't explicitly talk about sex, just implicit. Another way to call this, to word this, is man-woman interaction. You want a man-woman interaction. This is not a friend zone thing. We're not friends. We're not business colleagues. This is man to woman. You have to learn how to communicate man to woman immediately if you decide you're attracted to this woman, and that's why you're approaching her. Make statements and do cold reads rather than asking questions. Plow, 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 keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, and free associate. Free associate based on what she says, riff back and forth with her. She says something, tease her about it, riff on it, free associate, jump topics. You don't need to carry a single logical thread through your conversation. You can jump around. You can say nonsensical things. You can joke around. It doesn't have to be like an interview. In fact, the less like an interview, the better it is. Eventually, you're going to reach hook point. Hook point is when you can clearly tell that the woman is attracted to you. I'll talk more about what hook point is, how it's reached, and how to tell that you've reached it in part 3 of this series. After hook point, you want to start to get serious about physical escalation. Physical escalation, there's something called the Kino escalation ladder. You can research it. You can download the PDF and read it. Basically, there's a sort of a ladder of physical escalation that happens to get a woman comfortable with your physical touch so that it's not creepy. Learn how to physically escalate. Basically the way it works is that you start with the most innocuous, non-sexual physical escalation, and then you build up more and more and more towards more sexual things. And this is also a great way to communicate sexual intent without being explicit about it. And it's a great way to heighten the man-woman interaction. So usually when I approach a girl, I'll tap her on the shoulder like this. This is sort of like the beginning of the physical escalation. Because it's the most non-sexual, non-erotic part of her body. People will tap each other on the shoulder frequently. It has no sexual meaning usually. And so that's a great way to get somebody's attention. You can tap them on the shoulder like this. Or even when you're speaking with them, you can put your hands on her shoulders like this. But you don't want to keep them there. You can kind of put them there for a few seconds, take them off. Just get her comfortable with you touching her shoulders. Or touch one shoulder. The other thing you can do is you can just poke her. Not in a creepy way, but in a funny way. Like you say a joke and then she's laughing, she's giggling, and then you just poke her like this in the shoulder a little bit. And then once you do that and she's comfortable with that and you see she has a smile on her face, then you can poke her in the belly, for example. Or poke her in the leg, poke her in the thigh a little bit. What's nice about a poke is that it's like, boom, in and out, done. She's not thinking about it, you're not thinking about it. And then you can keep escalating more and more and more, and then your physical touch becomes more erotic and more sexual as it goes on. For example, you can give her a hug. You can give her a hug without saying so, or you can ask her, or you can just tell her, I want to hug you. Like she says something like, oh, I want to hug you. Come here, girl. And then you just hug her and then let her go. Usually when you start off, you want the physical escalation to be very kind of quick, in and out, rather than letting it linger. And then as you see that she's comfortable with it, you can let it linger more. Now, the key to physical escalation, here's the magic key, is that it needs to be calibrated to her mood. And the way you tell her mood is by her face. You watch her face as you do the physical escalation, and you notice her reaction. If she's smiling, if she's giggling, if she's laughing, and you touch her, and she's still doing that, great. That's a clear sign, a clear green light that you can keep doing more. If, however, she gives you a cold look, if she's not holding eye contact with you, if her mood changes to something negative, then you know that you over-escalated or that she's not comfortable with you or that you need to back off and make her more comfortable with you by talking with her and then try the escalation again and see if that's going to make her smile. So basically, you're not escalating in a way where you're trying to push yourself on her, right? Definitely not. If she's frowning, then you're doing it wrong. And then you don't escalate any further. But if she's smiling, push it. See how far you can escalate. So one of my favorite ways to escalate is to grab her by the hips, pull her into me, pull her hips into mine, grind her into me, front to front. And if she's smiling during all this, great. Then you can rub her, rub her sides, rub her hips, rub her legs, rub her ass, hold her ass, grab her ass, squeeze her ass. If she's still smiling, keep doing that. You can verbalize some of this stuff or not. A lot of times I'll do this without even verbalizing it, or you can ask her, you can politely ask her, like, as you're, for example, holding her hips, you can ask her politely, can I squeeze your butt? And a lot of times she'll say yes, and then you do it. Of course, if she says no, then you don't do it. You can even ask, like, what I will often do is, this is, of course, this very heavy physical escalation that I'm talking about right now, this is mostly night game, not day game. You're not going to be doing this kind of thing during the day. But at night game, you can get very physical very quickly. It's shocking, actually, how fast you can do this. Within 30 seconds. All this can be done within 30 seconds at night with the right girl. But of course, it assumes she's attracted to you, right? So you have to reach hook point. Don't be grabbing her hips before reaching hook point. That's going to be creepy. So you reach hook point here. She's obviously attracted. A lot of times if I see a girl with amazing tits at night and, I'm holding her by the hips, we've reached hook point, and I really like her tits, I'll just be very authentic about it. I'm like, you have amazing tits. Can I squeeze them? And almost always they say yes. You'd be amazed at how rarely they say no. And this gives you just a great excuse to physically escalate even harder. Of course, you have to understand, this is all being done with her permission, whether explicit or implicit. A lot of times it's just implicit. And the way you understand that it's implicit permission is she's smiling, right? That means she likes it. She might even say no, but she's still smiling. That means she still likes it. She just doesn't want to come off too slutty. And that's all fine. Then you can back off a little bit and then try again in 5 minutes. Like that. And then really, the physical escalation can get really obnoxious, like really obnoxious. I could tell you stories about physical escalation that would be so graphic that it would probably get me banned from YouTube. All with her permission, right? You have to understand, all with her permission. Okay, so you do some physical escalation, then you build rapport. You build rapport, intimacy, and emotional connection. This is huge. It's not enough just to physically arouse the woman and just to get her attracted. That's the first step, but then you got to build rapport. She has to know you and start to trust you. She's not going to sleep with you if she can't trust you, if she's not comfortable with you. She has to know about you. You have to tell her about yourself, your life, your dreams, your passions, your whatever you're doing. She has to be able to trust you. Share stories about your life, ask her stories about her life, build that intimate connection. Stick in the set as long as possible. If this is nighttime, try to make it go for an hour or 2 hours if you can. Next, you're going to have to start to think about handling logistics. You have to figure out, what is this girl doing? Where did she come from? How did she get here? Who is she with? What are her friends doing? Where is she going tomorrow? Does she have work tomorrow? Is she available tonight? What are her plans tonight? Where is she staying? What hotel? What house? Does she have roommates? All of these are known as logistics. Find out the logistics if you're trying to sleep with her that night. So the way you do this is you just literally ask her logistics questions throughout the entire interaction. And you can begin to do this rather quickly within the first 5 minutes. So what are the common logistics questions that you ask? First of all, you ask, who are your friends? How do you know each other? Where are you staying? Are you in a hotel? Are you a local? How did you get here? Did you drive? Did your friends drive? Is there a car here? Did you take a taxi? Did you take an Uber? What are your plans later tonight? Are you hanging out with your friends? Are you free? How long are you planning to stay out tonight? Till the very end? Or are you leaving in 5 minutes? Where are you going? Where are your friends going? Do you have a roommate? Do you live alone? Figure all this out. Figure out whether it's easier to take her to your place or to go with her to her place. Be open to both possibilities, depending on whatever is easiest. So you should know all of these things probably within 30 minutes of meeting her if you intend to make something happen that night. And then as you find those things out, you have to, in your own mind, kind of make some calculations as you're talking to her, like, okay, so she's here with her friends are all drunk and they're lost, or maybe she's lonely, she's by herself, and she has no plans tomorrow, she has no work tomorrow. Okay, she's free, she's available, she likes me. She got here by an Uber, that means we can take my car, we can take an Uber back to my place, or whatever, right? You have to calculate all these things in your head as you're talking to her if you want to make something happen that night. Handling her friends is also going to be a significant chunk of the structure of a successful pickup here, because most girls at night, they go out with their friends. Chances are her friends are there. A lot of times the friends don't want her to leave. A lot of times the friends will want to party or do other things or create drama. So you have to basically find out about her friend's situation, befriend her friends, don't ignore her friends, but also don't waste too much time on her friends. Focus on the girl, handle her friends, and find a way to make it comfortable for her to leave her friends at the end of the night, if that's what you want. Or if she refuses to, then go with her and her friends. Because in the end, you have to understand that at the end of the night, she's probably going to be sleeping in a bed separate from her friends. And all you got to do is be in that bed. Now, actually, that's not always true. A lot of times, like example in Vegas, girls will actually stay in the same room or even sleep in the same bed. If they're, best friends or something, they're going to share a hotel room. This is a problem because you're not going to be able to have sex with her if her friend is sleeping right next to you guys. So find out if she's alone in her room or if there's friends sleeping in the same room, because that does present a problem. Then you have to take her somewhere else. So after all that, you have to lead her, you have to move her around and see if she's going to follow you. And you begin just by moving her around the venue. Move her a couple of feet from the bar, move her to the bar, away from the bar, move her to the dance floor. Dancing is a great way to get her to move around with you and to follow your lead. Dance in different parts of the club or the bar. Go to the back, go to the dark areas, go to the front, go to the outside areas. If there's an outside area, just basically bounce around, move around, and see, is she comfortable following you? Because if she's not going to follow you, then she's not going to follow you home. And if she is comfortable following you, then keep leading her further and further until eventually you get to your place. Bounce around to new locations. So maybe from that bar, bounce to a different bar. If there's multiple bars on the same street, bounce around to multiple. This is going to make it feel like more of an adventure and more like you're not sticking around in the same place. It's going to make her feel more comfortable and familiar with you as you do that. Maybe after the bar, bounce her to some taco stand, get some tacos or get an ice cream or get a drink or get a coffee, just bounce around. If there's an after party, go to an after party. And then eventually you pull to your place or to her place. Once you pull her to your place or her place on the bed or on the couch, you do more physical escalation, more erotic physical escalation, make out with her, get into fingering her, and then ultimately sex. And that's how the whole process works from a sort of high level. There's really 3 phases to this whole process. There's the attraction phase, there's building rapport, and then there's the seduction phase. So the attraction phase starts from your approach to hook point. Hook point is the point where you know she's attracted to you. That means she's willing to sleep with you if she's comfortable with you and you are able to isolate her in a location where sex can happen. So once you reach hook point, after that, and usually hook point only takes 5 minutes to reach, then the rapport phase. In the rapport phase, you need to make her comfortable with you. You need to make her feel like she knows you and that she can trust you and that you're not some dangerous guy or some weirdo. The rapport phase can last 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours. This is almost like what you would be doing on a date, really getting to know each other on a deep level. So that's the rapport phase. And then once that is done, now she trusts you, she's attracted to you. The only thing that's preventing you from sleeping with her is the fact that you two are not isolated in a room together. And you haven't sexually aroused her enough yet. So isolate her in a room. That's going to be a challenge. That's where all the logistics stuff comes in. Isolate her in a room by herself with you, and then begin the seduction. And actually, that's the easiest part, is once you isolated her, the seduction usually is the easiest part. Now, sometimes what happens is that you isolate her, you begin your seduction, and then she gives you last-minute resistance, which means that she says, oh, I don't want to have sex with you. I barely know you, and blah, 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 blah. I don't feel comfortable. What this means is that you didn't build enough rapport earlier. You have to go back and build more rapport. If you build enough rapport, then she's not going to say those things to you. She'll be willing to have sex with you. On the other hand, if all you do is you build rapport, but you skip the first attraction phase, what's going to happen is that she's going to friend zone you. Building rapport is like becoming deep friends, but there's not the raw sexual attraction. So it's a good idea to do these in the right order. First 5 minutes of an interaction is attraction. Get her attracted. That eliminates the possibility of any kind of friend zone. Then spend the next hour or two building rapport. Then, after that, spend all your time trying to isolate her from her friends and so forth. And then you can seduce her and she will be happy to sleep with you. Now, sometimes what happens is that these will actually, the order of these phases will actually kind of get inverted and twisted, and this can actually trip you up and cause problems, but it can also work as well. For example, I've had it like recently I was at a club on Halloween, and this girl, like, it just immediately hooked, like raw sexual attraction, like within seconds, right? And she was dancing with me, I was dancing with her, and we were like moving around the club, and we went to the dance floor like within a minute. She started grinding on me. She was grinding on my dick for like 30 fucking minutes. Like crazy attraction, crazy physical escalation, very, very fast. It was completely on. She was very turned on. She was very horny. I was very turned on as well. Like everything was going good. And then I basically tell her, let's get out of here. Follow me. And she's like, okay, let's go. And so I walk her out of the club, walk her to my car. But the problem is she didn't even know my name. It just went so hot and heavy, so much physical escalation, so much attraction right off the bat that we didn't have any time for rapport, because it's a very loud club. On the dance floor, you can't even talk. So the mistake that I made there is that after all the dancing and grinding and shit, I should have realized that the stages were sort of inverted. The phases were inverted here, that we missed the rapport stage. I sort of went straight to seduction on the dance floor, skipping rapport, and then try to pull her. And it didn't work. She didn't end up coming home with me. And the reason that happened is because what I should have done is, after all the dancing and grinding, I should have taken her to a quiet place in the club, sat her down, and just built rapport for 30, 60 minutes. And then she would have trusted me enough to come home with me. But you know what? Sometimes you can literally pull a girl in 5 minutes. Sometimes the raw attraction is strong enough, she's down enough that she'll just come home with you without even building any rapport, without even knowing your name. That's happened to me as well. Literally 5 minutes. You can pull a girl in 5 minutes. I've done that. But generally speaking, that's not a solid strategy. That's not going to be consistent. What you want is you want to build your game consistently rather than just depending on, fluke luck or Hail Marys that, occasionally land in your lap. All right. So here are the top things that you want to learn in field. This is a list. Write all this stuff down. And basically, as you're going to be going out, you're going to sort of have to check off each item on the list and start to get experience with it specifically. You're going to be like training. These are like isolation training exercises for you. So first of all, approaching without excuses. And man, you have so many excuses for why you don't approach girls. So you got to be able to train yourself to approach without any excuses. Secondly is a strong direct approach. No meek approaches, no half-ass approaches. If you decide to approach a girl, you're approaching her, you're grabbing her attention. She has to hear you. She has to give you her full attention. So do that. Go spend a week or a month just practicing strong approaches with no excuses. Next is squaring up to her. Face to face. This is part of what a strong approach is. Don't be talking over her shoulder or behind her back. Square up to her. Full attention on you. Next, work on strong eye contact, laser strong eye contact, unwavering eye contact, uncomfortable eye contact. Your eye contact should be so strong and so sexual, she should be looking away from you because she can't hold that much sexual eye contact with you. Practice that for a month. Next is smile. Practice smiling when you open. This is huge. It's a disarming mechanism because if you're not smiling, she doesn't know you might be a rapist or a serial killer. Next is when you're speaking to her, especially when you open, firm vocal tone and be loud so she can hear you. Enunciate clearly. Don't whisper. Don't mumble. Don't babble. Very firm. And also don't supplicate. Don't be like, hi, nice to meet you. Do you want to date me? Not like that. It's like, hey, I wanted to meet you. I think you're beautiful. Like that, like firm, strong, clear, assertive. Practice that for a month. Also, practice slowing down your speech and your movements. When you're anxious and nervous, especially as a newbie and you're opening a girl, you're going to want to tend to talk very fast and slur your words and mumble and bumble and move frenetically like this. Practice going out for a month or for a week and just opening slowly, allowing space and room and silence, pauses between when you get her attention. It's like, hey, I wanted to meet you. I think you're beautiful. You see those pauses? Those are very important. Instead of saying like, hey, I wanted to meet you. I think you're beautiful. That doesn't let her register all that. Also, those pauses are necessary so that you can react to what she is feeling and thinking and saying. Because you might say, hey, and then she might not yet have given you her full attention. Then you have to wait. It's like, hey, she's talking to a friend. Hey, tap her on the shoulder. Hey, get her full attention. That might take you 10 seconds to do. Once you have her attention, then you say, I wanted to talk to you. And then she gives you more attention. And then you say, I think you're beautiful. And then you listen and look at her face. How is she reacting to what you just said? And then you riff on that and you improvise based on that. This is all extremely improvisational, you see. So slow down your speech and your movements so that you're not flowing like water. You're like a rich, thick maple syrup or honey that is slowly pouring onto the girl. That's how you want your speech to be. Also, work on being very relaxed and present with her, experiencing her rather than stuck in your head thinking about what to say next. And you got to really relax. You got to be comfortable in your own skin, especially when you're at these very loud nightclubs. One of the most challenging things about loud nightclubs, like in Vegas here, is that they just blast you with ear-splitting music and everybody is in this high energy state and you just don't feel comfortable. You can barely hear yourself thinking sometimes in these clubs. And so what you have to do is you have to just stand there for 10 minutes in a club and just absorb the energy, let it fill you up, become comfortable. You have to be so comfortable in that environment. That can be difficult for us introverts because we don't like that very high stimulation. But you can train yourself to get much better at that. I've been forced to here in Vegas because we got some really obnoxious clubs. But then actually you can use that to your advantage because those obnoxious clubs then allow you to escalate very, very quickly. That's the beauty of them. That's why they're so loud to begin with. Other things for you to learn in field: be positive, be playful, and self-amusing. Have fun. Be there to have fun. First and foremost, you got to be having fun. If you're having fun, she'll start having fun with you. Don't take any of this too seriously. Make jokes. Entertain yourself while you're there. Entertain yourself more than you're entertaining the girl. The next step that you want to work on is building state. Building state means putting yourself into this fun, relaxed, very social state. It's almost like getting drunk, but you're not drinking. The way you build your state is by approaching, getting blowouts, having successes. It doesn't really matter whether you have a success or a blowout. It's going to keep building your state. The way that you fail to build state is by getting in your head and not doing approaches, and then getting more and more in your head. Or if you get blown out, then getting in your head and not doing more approaches. Building state is crucial. You want to get to a point where you're able to build your state every night you go out with a few approaches, a few warm-ups, and then you're in state. And then from that state, that's when your best approaches will happen. It's very hard to have great approaches unless you're in state. And especially the way that I do it, I all the nights that I've gone out, hundreds of nights that I've gone out, thousands of girls that I've talked to over years, I haven't had a single drink. So when I go out to the loudest clubs and I have the most fun, I don't drink at all. I'm completely sober. And that's what I recommend for you. Don't drink. Build your state sober. And what happens is that you'll realize that you can build your state so well, you can get so good at building your state without drinking, that you can literally have more fun sober than most people in the club have when they're drunk. And in addition to that, you'll have your full wits about you, and it's the best of both worlds. And also you're not destroying your liver and your health, and you're not wasting a bunch of money on drinks. Every drink in Vegas costs like $25. I've spent thousands. I've saved thousands of dollars of not buying a single drink. A lot of times I have so much fun and I'm in such a good state in the club, not always, but on many nights, that girls actually won't believe me when I say that I don't drink. In fact, that girl on Halloween, when I was pulling her to my car, she told me, "We can't go in your car, you're drunk." And I said, "I don't drink." And this sometimes, sometimes this so shocks girls because they expect you just to be drinking that they literally don't believe me. This is actually a great thing. You want to have so much fun at the club that people think you're drunk, but you're not actually drunk. This means you're doing it exactly right. Now you know how to build state. The next thing you want to work on is sexual intent and man-to-woman interaction. Make sure that within 5 minutes of talking to a woman, it's clear to her that you're talking to her in a man-to-woman way with sexual intent. Then, if you can do this, you'll never get friend zoned ever again. The next thing to practice is physical escalation and the Kino escalation ladder. Go research that and read it and practice it. I spent an entire month or two when I first started gaming where I would go out for an entire month and all I did was just work on physical escalation. I would try to escalate as quickly as possible. I did that in Vegas. I did a 30-day challenge in Vegas back in 2013 where I just learned really solid physical escalation game. And to this day, I have really good physical escalation game. It's my favorite way a lot of times to open, especially in loud clubs. Physical escalation tends to be very polarizing. It either hooks immediately or the girl just rejects you. This is actually kind of good because you can quickly go through 10 girls. 8 of them will reject you, no problem. And then 2 of them will hook really hard. And then you clearly know that it's on. Whereas with verbal games, sometimes it's a little bit, you're kind of in the gray zone. You don't really know what's happening. Of course, the downside here is that you are forcing her to basically decide immediately whether she is attracted to you. And sometimes a girl will reject you just because you go in too hard and too fast. Where if you did some kind of slower, more indirect verbal game over 10, 20 minutes, then maybe she would open up to you more. But here she rejects you. So you do lose more girls with physical escalation if you do it right off the bat. But that's one of my favorite ways to open. I just enjoy it. I found that, going back to that point about finding your authentic style, for me, my authentic style is that I love to do physical escalation, especially when I'm really genuinely attracted to a girl. I just immediately want to get very physically touchy with her. And since that's authentic to me, it tends to work really well if I'm in that mood and I really find her attractive. Now, if I don't find her attractive, then physical escalation doesn't work so well because it's not congruent. So congruency here is a very important principle. We'll be talking about that more in part 3. The next thing you want to work on is asking screening questions and handling logistics. So get good at asking logistics questions. Where are you from? How do you know your friends? Where are your friends? What are your plans? Where are you staying? What hotel? Do you live alone? Blah, blah, blah. Ask all those questions. Get good and just instinctive about asking all those questions as you're flirting with her. You sprinkle them in throughout the conversation over a course of 20, 30 minutes. You don't ask them all back to back. That would be too awkward. You'd be surprised. I remember when I first learned this idea of logistics questions, I was like, wait a minute, girls will answer these questions for you? Is that kind of weird? Why would she answer these questions? That was my first sort of doubt about that. And then when I actually started practicing it, I realized that there's never been a single girl who has not answered my logistics questions ever. Girls answer logistics questions so easily. It's not even a problem. The next thing you want to work on is flirting, small talk, and not running out of things to say. This is a huge topic. I'll cover this in part 3 more. I'll give you a whole section about how to not run out of things to say. The next thing you want to work on is not asking boring questions, instead making statements, cold reading, making observations about her. Observational openers are really good. Observation while you're talking to her is really good to keep the conversation going. The next thing you want to work on is being emotional rather than logical. That means being dramatic, expressing negative emotions. If she tells you something you don't like, react with negative emotions. I don't like that. It's what do you like? Oh, you like, oh, you're from Alabama? I don't like Alabama. Alabama's stupid. Something like that. Express negative emotion. You don't have to always be positive with a girl. Sometimes exaggerate your expressions and be hyperbolic. Sometimes she says something, it's not like I hate that thing, but I'll play it up a little bit oh, I really hate that thing. It's you voted for Trump? I fucking hate you. Something like that. But it's done in a playful way. I don't really hate her. It's just, we're playing, we're teasing, we're flirting. Experiment with push-pull, challenge her, be challenging. Don't just be a pushover, be challenging. If she says something, tease her on it. Another thing to work on is talking about yourself. Us introverts, we suck at this. We suck at talking about ourselves. We think it's egotistical or narcissistic or that nobody would want to hear. But really, the secret to extroverted conversation is that extroverts have no filters and they talk about themselves endlessly. That's their secret. So you got to learn to be like an extrovert and just talk about yourself. Talk about what you ate today. Talk about your job. Talk about your career. Talk about your dreams. Talk about your future. Talk about where you're going for vacation next month. Talk about your spirituality. Talk about your psychedelic experience. Just talk about yourself. This will fill up a lot of room and time in the conversation. And also, she gets to learn about you as you're talking about yourself. And then she can get interested. You might start talking about how you're going to go do some meditation retreat next month in Hawaii, and she might be interested in that and learning more about that. She'll start asking you questions. But if you don't tell her that, she won't know how to ask you about it. She's not going to be asking you oh, are you meditating next month? Are you taking a vacation next month? She doesn't know. She can only know these things, and she can get a sense of what questions to ask if you plow her with some stories about your life and what you're doing. Next, work on charisma. Become more charismatic. Become more expressive with your face, with your voice, with your hand gestures. Charisma. There are entire courses online you can take about charisma. Entire YouTube channels about how to develop charisma. Entire books have been written about how to develop charisma. Practice that. Next, practice improvisation and free association. So when she tells you something, you free associate off of that. She might tell you that she went on a walk with her dog, and then you hear the word dog, and then you think about hot dogs. And now you start talking about hot dogs. That's free association. See? It's not a direct logical connection to go from a dog to a hot dog. And then when we're talking about hot dogs, I can think about that, and I can think about some sort of movie that involves hot dogs. See, and then we leap. Now we start talking about movies. As we're talking about movies, we might start talking about Star Wars, and then we're talking about stars, and we're talking about astronomy. And as we're talking about astronomy, we're talking about black holes. And then we're talking about black holes, we might talk about, racism, black racism. We start talking about that, and then we're talking about racism. Then we start talking about Trump, and then we're talking about Trump, and then whatever. And then you develop this giant thread of conversations from doing free association rather than staying on a single thread. And you can also multi-thread conversations. So you're not just talking about one thing at a time, but you're talking about, one thing, and then you jump to a different thread, then you jump back to the old thread, and this way you have multiple threads running. Practice that. Practice self-deprecating humor. Rather than trying to brag to her, disqualify yourself and tell her all how horrible you are. That flips the script. Next, work on not saying anything sexually explicit. So when I first started game, I was a bit obnoxious, and sometimes I would sprinkle sexually explicit things into a conversation. And what I found is that usually this blew me out, and it ruined the mood. One of the things that makes girls immediately repulsed by you is being overly sexually explicit and vulgar. So just don't go there. Don't make rape jokes. Don't talk about how you're going to have sex with her. Don't talk about who you had sex with, this sort of stuff. This is generally not good. Don't talk about glory holes. Don't talk about porn. Just stay away from these topics. They're not necessary. The next thing to practice is not bragging and not trying to impress her. If you have an instinct for doing this, stop doing it. Stop talking about how rich you are, what kind of car you have, what kind of house you have. This is not necessary. In fact, go back and practice the self-deprecating humor instead. Next, practice dealing with her friends. Get good at befriending her friends. One of the best ways to do this is if you see a friend, give a compliment to the friend. Oh, I like your purse. I like your dress. I like your earrings. I like your necklace. I like your hair. You seem like a fun friend. You seem like you're a good friend. You seem like you're a good friend to her. Find out a little bit about the friends. Find out their names. Find out what they do, how they know each other. Talk with them a little bit. Then get back to your girl so that your friends, her friends, see you as a cool guy and not some weird, rapey, creepy guy. Then they're much more likely to let her go with you at the end of the night. If her friends don't know anything about you, they're going to cock block you at the end of the night, and you're going to lose your girl to her friends. The next thing to practice is not ejecting from set. Stick in the set to the bitter end. Stay in there. If she says she wants to go get a drink, stay with her. If she says she needs to go find her friends, stay with her. If she says she's leaving the club, stay with her. As long as she's okay with it. A lot of times, a big thing that I struggled with is I would talk to a girl for 5-10 minutes, then I would try to grab a number and run out of the set as quickly as possible because I was afraid I was going to screw it up or that I was going to run out of things to say. No, plow that set to the bitter end. Practice number closing. Get smooth at asking for her number such that you're not hesitating and you're not fearful. It's hey, girl, I want your number. Give me your number. I'm going to see you again, like that, whatever. Have her punch the number into your phone. Always get her number. Don't give your number to her. Get her number, always. Practice Insta-Dates, especially if you're doing day game. Before you ask for the number, first try for an Insta-Date. So you're talking to with her for 10 minutes, everything's going great. Then you say, hey, there's a Starbucks over here. It's just a couple hundred feet, down this way. Let's go over there, grab a coffee. We'll keep talking. See if she bites. Try to get her interested in that. If she says, no, I got to go, then you get a number. But don't ask for a number first before you try an Insta-Date. Insta-Dates are crucial for day game. Next, you got to work on leading, moving, and bouncing around. Don't just stand in one place at the bar where you opened her and just talk for 2 hours and not move. That's stupid. You talk to her for 10 minutes, then you move her 2 feet. Talk to her for 10 more minutes, then you move her to the other side of the bar. Talk to her for 10 more minutes, then you move her to a different bar. Or, usually a bar will have multiple bars in the same building. Go there and just keep moving her around like that. Get her comfortable with that. Get comfortable yourself with leading her. Get comfortable bouncing to different locations. Get comfortable bouncing from a bar to food, from food to the park, from the park to your place, and so forth. Another thing to practice is managing your own mood and self-doubt. A lot of times you'll go out and sometimes you'll be in a good mood. Other times you'll be in a bad mood. You won't even want to talk to girls, but you have to do it anyways. You have to put yourself into a positive mood. Sometimes you're going to be depressed. Sometimes you're going to be heartbroken. Sometimes I would go to a club and I would be heartbroken because some girl broke up with me the other day, or because, or I would be depressed because of some other thing that was happening in my life, or something else was on my mind, some business problem and so forth. You got to manage your own mood, get all that shit out of your mind, get all the self-doubt out of your mind. Or sometimes I would just be in a deep self-doubt where I would be thinking like, well, I've been going out for the last week and I haven't been having any great results. And now I feel bad and I'm doubting myself. Maybe I'm not attractive anymore. Maybe I'm getting too old. Maybe whatever. Maybe I'm not maybe girls don't like me as much as I thought I did. Maybe this whole thing is not going to work. Maybe pickup doesn't even work. Maybe it's all a scam, right? You get these self-doubts. You have to be able to manage these, remove them from your mind, put yourself into a positive mood, and go approach. So learn to do that. The next item on the list is building rapport and intimacy. Get good at this. Remember to do this, even if the girl likes you, even if she makes out with you. Let's say you're walking through the club and a girl just jumps on you, jumps in your lap, starts making out with you and grabbing your dick. This will happen if you go out to clubs enough. And then you're thinking, okay, awesome, this is amazing, let's pull her home. No. Go build some rapport and some intimacy. Find out something about her, share something about yourself, share life stories, share your passions, find out about her as a person. Then pull her. Have some stories in your own life that you are good at telling. You have stories, stuff that has happened to you, crazy stuff, interesting stuff, scary stuff, fun stuff, adventurous stuff you've done. Have some of those stories in the back of your mind and get experience sharing those stories with people. This reveals stuff about you. Try to find stories that reveal things about your character and who you are authentically. And I'm not talking about fake stories. I'm talking about real stories from your life. Like maybe, I could tell you a story like back when I lived in Dallas in the middle of winter, I saw a little dog, a little stray dog in the middle of like a cold ass winter, just like shivering under my car. And I saw this dog, and I immediately realized this dog, it was like a homeless dog in the middle of winter. It's going to die out here. It's so cold, like below zero. It's going to die out here. No food, no warmth. So I caught the dog under my car and brought it into my apartment, and then tried to, feed the dog and all this sort of stuff. I can go to a whole story about that. And eventually we couldn't find the dog's owner. The dog didn't have any tags, but eventually my neighbor saw that I took in this dog. I didn't even know how to take care of dogs. It was the only dog I ever took care of. My neighbor gave me some dog food. I fed her. I fed the dog. And then eventually we found a new owner for the dog to adopt the dog. Right? So like a story like that tells you something about my personality, tells you that I'm compassionate, that I care about animals, blah, 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 blah. Something like that. You tell a story like this to a girl, now she knows something about you. She can trust you now. Now, I didn't make that story up. That actually happened. So have some of those. Those stories have happened to you in your own life. It's just that a lot of times you forget about them, and then you don't actually talk about them with new people that you meet because you're too in your head and you forget about those stories. Or maybe you think those stories aren't interesting. I mean, this story about this dog is not particularly interesting, but it does tell you something about my character. And you feel like now you know me a little better than you used to. The next thing you want to practice is getting good at dealing with shit tests. The more attractive the girl, the more she's going to shit test you. What a shit test is basically she's testing you for congruence and for the strength of your frame. So when you come up to a girl and you're all confident, you have a loud voice, and you're assertive, and you're flirting, and you're doing all this, and you're telling her all these stories about yourself, and you're presenting yourself as this cool, high status, high value guy. Okay, but what if you're faking it? What if you're lying? What if you're putting on a front and actually you're this shy, scared guy who's just puffing himself up like a strong guy. See, the girl needs to test for that. And so subconsciously, she has ways of testing you. I'll give you a story about probably the strongest shit test that I faced, which was actually with one of the most attractive girls that I ever cold approached. So this ridiculously attractive girl, she was basically like a nude model. I saw her sitting at a Chipotle style fast food place. I walk in there to get my Mexican food. This was some years ago. And she was there. It was dead quiet. It was only her and me. She was getting her food. She was about to sit down. I see her. She's like in her sweatpants and sweatshirt from the gym. She just came out of the gym, getting her Mexican food. And I can just tell that like she's ridiculously attractive. Even through all the sweatpants, all that shit, I can just see it. I'm like, God damn, I got to open this girl. This is like amazing. You don't usually see a girl like this at a Chipotle. So I get my food and I'm thinking like, how do I open this girl? She's sitting there at a little circular table just eating her food. So I say, fuck it, I'm just going to go and sit down. So I just sit down right across from her at her little table. This kind of shocks her. I just sit down, start eating my food and start talking about myself. Just as though, very casually, as though nothing is happening. I just start talking about myself. I talk and talk and talk. Eventually she gets a little interested, starts asking me some questions and so forth. I mean, clearly it's obvious to her that I'm hitting on her. It was a very ballsy approach to do. I almost didn't do it, but I did. And then, but she was very attractive and she was very, very entitled and clearly, a lot of guys hit on her. And so she started shit testing me. Her ethnicity was she was mixed race. She was half Thai, half German, very interesting mix. And so we started talking about Thailand and so forth. And then we started talking about this, in Thailand, they have this notion called lady boys, which are like, I guess they're Thai boys who turn themselves into girls, basically trans folk. So basically they look like girls, but they have dicks. So we started talking about that. And she said that basically the point was that she said that she was one of these lady boys and that actually she had a dick. She said it so convincingly that for a minute, she almost convinced me that maybe it's true. And it fazed me because when I sat down, I was very confident. I was talking very confident. And then she sort of like threw this monkey wrench into my game. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, I didn't really express this externally, but internally, as she's telling me this, I'm thinking like, is she for real or not? And I wasn't sure. And it sort of like threw me off my game. And it made me like waver in my confidence. But eventually I concluded to myself that this is a shit test. And so, she started talking about her dick. And the way I passed the shit test was I said, don't worry, girl. I love dick. I'm going to love your dick anyways. All right. And just continue running my game. And it worked great. Eventually she asked me for my number. So that's how that went. So yeah, girls will shit test you like this. They're trying to see like how much they're able to unground you. And if they can unground you, then they realize, oh, he's just sort of like a weak man posing as a strong guy. And then they lose attraction. But if they try to like unground you and they see that you're stable, you're like a rock, then this actually makes her feel comfortable and secure around you. And that's what the feminine wants from the masculine. The next thing to work on is handling bullshit excuses and token resistance. A lot of times girls will send mixed signals and will give you token resistance and token no's. Like, you lean in to kiss her and she smiles and just kind of like coyly pushes you away. Now, she's not rejecting you per se. She's just like not ready. She's giving you some token resistance. This doesn't mean she doesn't want to be kissed. She does want to be kissed, but you try again in 5 minutes. Or she can give you bullshit excuses about why she has to go. Like she has to go to work or she has to go to a class in 5 minutes. A lot of times that's just bullshit. Now, sometimes she does have to go. Or sometimes she has a legitimate excuse. She has to go to work or whatever. But a lot of times their excuses are bullshit. So just one very poignant example for you. A wingman of mine who's quite good here in Vegas, he just told me this story recently. So he he opened this girl in Vegas, talking to her. She's really into him. Everything's going great. Clearly it's on. And this girl just keeps telling him, after like an hour of talking to him, like, we're not having sex tonight. We're not having sex. And she just keeps telling him this like 3 times. 3 times in the night, she told him, we're not having sex. And he's like, okay, girl, I'm not even trying. Like, okay, we're not having sex. Eventually, though, they wind up at his place and they're on the couch and they're making out and all that. And the girl just sort of like shoves him and says, why haven't you fucked me yet? And this is a very experienced wing of mine. This guy has thousands of approaches under his belt, like extremely experienced. But even he was taken aback by this because like, girl, why are you sending me these fucking mixed signals? You told me 3 times we're not having sex tonight. And now at the very end of the night, you're upset at me that I haven't fucked you already? Of course, guys are confused by this. So girls will play these games with you. Now, does this mean that if a girl tells you we're not having sex tonight, that she's always lying to you? No. Sometimes she really means it. So it can be difficult to sort the wheat from the chaff. So it takes a lot of experience to learn what are the legitimate concerns that a woman has in sleeping with you and what is the bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit with women because they don't want to come off as slutty. Not in their own minds. They don't want to think of themselves as sluts, but also they don't want to look like sluts in front of all their friends. So they come up with stories and excuses for why they can't come home with you and blah, 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 blah. With all that being said, ultimately, if at the end of the night, if she says, I don't want to have sex with you, and she says it in a firm tone, then don't have sex with her. I'm not telling you to rape women here or to force them into anything that they don't want to do. It's just that women aren't always honest with themselves about all the bullshit and excuses they make up when they're dating guys and actually interested in sleeping with guys, but they can't be explicit about it. So this is something you'll learn as you get more experience with women, is that there's a lot of bullshit and games that women play. It's not just guys that are playing games. In fact, if women didn't play games, guys wouldn't need to learn game. The reason guys need to learn game is because the reality is, for most of us guys, look, you think we like all this game stuff? We don't. If I had it my way, I would see an attractive woman and I would just walk up to her and say, hey, you know what? I like you. Let's fuck. That would be the simplest, most authentic, most honest, most truthful way of communicating my experience and what I actually feel for her. But see, if you tell that to a woman, you're never going to get laid in your entire life. You can't walk up to a woman and just say, hey, I like you, let's fuck, even though that's authentically what us guys oftentimes think. So we have to play games. The reason we have to play games is because they want us to play games. Because sex is taboo and you can't be explicit about it. And if you tell that to a woman, she's going to think you're a creep. Does that actually make you a creep? No, it just makes you a fucking, an honest guy. Honestly, us guys, within 3 seconds, we know if we want to have sex with you. That's just the truth. But we can't be honest about that because if we were, we would never get laid. So yeah, it's a game. It's called a game. It's called game for a reason because both sides play games. Who plays more games? Well, I'm not going to get into that. You also want to learn some text game. I can't get into that. It's going to take too long. You want to learn how to set up proper dates. That might be a separate video on itself. You want to learn how to compliment women. Basically, when it comes to complimenting women, I give compliments very rarely. And when you compliment a woman, try to compliment her on anything other than her physical appearance or her sexiness. Because this is too obvious. Try to compliment her on her personality, things about you like about her spirit, her soul, these sorts of more deeper compliments. Maybe her style, her dress. These are all better than just saying, "Hey, I love your tits" or "I love your ass." That's not a good compliment. And lastly, work on telling her why you like her and why she's special. So this is huge for getting a girl to sleep with you. For a girl to want to sleep with you, she has to feel like she's special to you and not just like any other girl, or that you're just using her body to gratify yourself. So for you to genuinely be able to tell her why you like her, you have to find out some stuff about her and make a mental list as you're getting to know her about the stuff that you really like. And also have a list yourself of things you like in a girl. For example, I like it when girls love animals. I find that adorable. So if I find out that a girl likes animals, that makes me like her more. I like girls, for example, who are into psychedelics. If I find out that a girl likes psychedelics, I'm much more interested in her. I like it when a girl is very open-minded, obviously, because I'm very open-minded. I like it when a girl is into spirituality and meditation and understands things about love and God and so forth, it's kind of stuff that I teach. I like it when a girl is into eating healthy. I like it when a girl is into personal development, right? So these are just a little bit of some of the list of the things that I like in a girl personality-wise. And so if I find out that the girl hits any of these points, I want to make sure that I reflect that back to her and I say, I really like these things about you. And then when she hears that, then now she feels like we have more going on here than just me wanting her for her body. And then she's much more willing to have sex. All right, so that's a lot of stuff that I just gave you, that long list of stuff. It's going to take you years to practice all of those in isolation and to dial in all those aspects of your game. Don't worry, don't get too overwhelmed by this. So you don't need to be able to execute on all of those points in order to have good game and to get results. And in fact, don't be thinking about all those points when you're going out at night. You can't learn all of that at once. So here, I'm going to give you a shorter list of just the basics to start with. Here are the basics, the most pared down list of what you need to do to get some results, to get started as a newbie. So, number 1, find clubs, bars, and malls to go to that are good for approaching. Number 2, go out. Actually go out. Number 3, approach consistently, get over your approach anxiety, bust through it, and build state. Number 4, do a solid direct approach. No meek half-ass approaches. Number 5, work on strong eye contact, squaring up, smiling, and strong, firm, assertive voice. Number 6, be positive and put yourself into a happy mood as you're talking to girls. Number 7, keep talking, keep plowing, flirting, and do not eject from the set early. Keep talking until she blows you out, until she tells you to leave. And finally, always try to end the interaction with an Insta-Date, a phone number, or bouncing her to some new location. This is a small list. This is a much shorter list. This is what you got to focus on as a newbie to get started. These are the fundamentals. Everything else is like filling in the details, getting a little bit more technical and, perfecting various aspects of that. But this is the core. This is like the 80%. This is rather the 20% that's going to get you the 80% of the results here. Now, of course, as a newbie, you're starting this. One of the biggest questions you're going to have is, Leo, how do I deal with approach anxiety? I'm too scared to approach. Is there a magic pill to get rid of my approach anxiety? Well, there isn't. The only way to get rid of approach anxiety is to approach. You feel the fear and you do it anyways. And you keep doing it all night long until you get 20 approaches or 30 approaches into the night. After about 10 approaches, the approach anxiety should go away as you gain state. It doesn't matter if it's a successful approach or a failed approach, you will still gain state and the approach anxiety will go away. And then the next night, the approach anxiety will be back and you have to do it all over again. And you do this night after night after night after night after night after night after night, hundreds and thousands of times. I've done thousands of approaches, and if I go out tonight, I'm still going to have some approach anxiety the first few girls that I talk to, because I'm not going to be in state. I'm going to be in a logical mood, and it's just going to be there. So the approach anxiety doesn't really go away. You just sort of stop taking it seriously, and you learn to just act despite whatever anxiety you have. This is how it tends to work. There's no magic solution. There's nothing you can do to get rid of your approach anxiety forever. And now you can approach any girl without any hesitation and no fear and no anxiety. No, there's no such thing. You do it despite your fear. It takes a lot of practice. You will get a lot of rejections. And you will have to face the emotional pain of rejection. Now, most of the times the rejections are rather innocent. It's like the girl will just hand wave you away, or she'll just turn her back on you, or she'll just give you sort of a face like this and reject you that way. In the end, these rejections are meaningless. They have no substance to them. They don't really matter. But still, some nights, you might get rejected 10 times in a row, and you might feel like you have a shitty night. And there's going to be a sort of a self-doubt there, an emotional pain. Maybe you're going to start to get in your head about how you're not attractive, you're too bald, you're too fat, you're too short, or whatever. And you think that that's why these girls are rejecting you. But you have to remember that some nights are just going to be bad nights, and some nights are going to be good nights. And you should expect that about 1/3 of girls will hate you if you're doing this right. 1/3 of girls will be neutral to you and just kind of be friendly. And then 1/3 of girls will love you. Roughly, that's how it's going to break down. Now, why will 1/3 of girls hate you? Well, because you're bringing out, if you're doing this correctly, you're bringing out your authentic personality. And your authentic personality, it's coming out strong and clear and sharp. And your authentic personality is not for every girl. About 1/3 of girls will just not find your type of personality very appealing. They won't like your energy, they won't like your mood, they won't like your sense of humor, whatever. Fine. That's fine. That's good. You don't want 100% of girls to love you. You also don't want 100% of girls to be friendly to you, because that means you're not being sharp enough with the delivery of your personality, and also you're not being sexual and intentful enough. If 100% of girls are just friendly towards you, this is actually a problem, because it means that you're not being direct enough, and you're not being polarizing enough. You want to be polarizing enough where you're sorting the wheat from the chaff, and you're forcing the girl to make a decision about whether she is willing to sleep with you. And maybe about 1/3 of them will be, if you follow it up and do everything else correctly. Now, which of course you won't. You're going to screw up the logistics many times. So in reality, you won't sleep with 1/3 of the girls you talk to, but at least 1/3 of the girls you talk to should be fairly romantically receptive to you and get attracted to you, let's say. So when you go out and you experience these rejections, focus on the small successes. Rather than focusing on how 1/3 of girls rejected you or hated you, focus on the 1/3 that loved you and that hooked and that were attracted and were willing to sleep with you even if they didn't. So a lot of times you'll see a girl get attracted to you, but she won't sleep with you for many stupid logistical reasons. She has work tomorrow, her friends took her away, whatever. So at the end of the night, focus on the girls that hooked and realize that all those girls would have slept with you if a little bit of more time was possible, and maybe the logistics were better, and her friends weren't in the way, and her car wasn't whatever in a problem, and so forth. That should give you a self-esteem boost. That, tonight, 2 or 3 girls would have slept with me. That's great. Focus on that rather than the other 10 girls that didn't like you or didn't want to talk to you or whatever. Remember that it's not your goal to get every girl to love you. It's your goal to actually be polarizing and to get a handful of girls to really, really get attracted to you. That's your goal. And get used to having massive failure. You're going to have a lot of failure in this process. Failure is how you learn. There's going to be a lot of interactions that are going well and you screw it up because you say something wrong or you do something wrong or you escalate something wrong or you try to bounce her and it fails or whatever. She shit tests you and you fail. That's how you learn. Commit to doing at least 1,000 approaches before you quit. You got to really hang in there and be persistent. Massive persistence is key here. Also, what's key is finding some good wingmen. This is crucial for emotional support. The wingmen are not so much there to help you pull, although they could be, but the wingmen are there to give you camaraderie so that you don't feel all alone in the club or in the bar. And even when you get blown out or you have a bad night, the wingman is there for emotional support. You can chat with the wingman. You can shit talk with the wingman. You can have a lot of fun just with your wingman. You can have more fun with your wingman than with your girls. And you can transfer that fun you're having with your wingman into the interactions with the girls. Now, some nights will be absolutely brutal. Some nights you will walk home crying. I had a few nights where I would literally drive home crying in my car when I first started game, because it was that brutally difficult, because I was just so hopeless. I thought it would never work. I was so bad at it. My skills were so bad that I thought this was never going to work. And if this doesn't work, what will work? Nothing will work. If this doesn't get me laid, nothing will get me laid. So you start to lose hope. It becomes very emotionally challenging some nights. What you have to remember is to stick in there, and that no one night defines this process for you. Remember that you're not doing this for the sex. You have to have a larger vision than just sex or just even girls. You have to have a large, positive vision that will keep you going out consistently. What is your large vision? Well, your large vision is that you're going to grow yourself into this strong man. You're going to develop amazing game. You're going to become charismatic. You're going to become much more social, and you're going to transform your whole self doing this for a period of years. And so you got to become your own greatest cheerleader here. Nobody else is going to cheerlead you. You have to cheerlead yourself. So if you have a shitty night, you have to, at the end of the night, you have to tell yourself, well, yeah, tonight was a shitty night, but you know what? My shitty nights, I still learned lessons here. What are the lessons from the shitty night? And oftentimes what I find is that after my shittiest nights, the next nights are oftentimes my best nights, because it forces me to double down and to work even harder the following night and to not take my nights for granted. For example, I might go out, and this particular night I'm in a bad mood. I only do one approach instead of 20 the way I wanted to, only one. And I feel shitty at the end of the night for only doing one approach. But then, because I feel so shitty, the next night when I go out, I remember that experience of having that one approach and how miserable I felt for doing that one approach. The next night I go out, I'll do 20 approaches, because I would rather do 20, face the anxiety of doing 20, than having a night where I only do one and then feeling shitty about it for the rest of the day. So keep reminding yourself of this larger vision, and keep telling yourself this is going to be worth it. You're going to get better, but it's a very, very steep learning curve, and that you're at the beginning of the learning curve. So it's okay if you have some horrible, brutal nights. Don't judge yourself on a daily basis. Judge yourself on a monthly basis. See yourself improving every month. If you keep going out consistently, you will be improving every month. You'll see your interactions become longer. They hook harder. You're escalating better. Your verbals are getting better. You're becoming more funny. You're becoming, you're entering state faster. Your approaches are stronger and clearer. You're going to see this over a period of months, but you may not see it day to day. There's variability between your days. Some days are just going to be bad days. Some days are going to be very slow. Some days you're going to walk into a club or a bar, and there's going to be hardly anybody there worth opening. And you still got to make something of it. Stick in there. Now, how do you get started with all this if you're extremely shy and you have social anxiety to the point where it's hard for you to even talk to a stranger? This might be too much for you, what I explained above. So you got to break it down into baby steps. So first, start with basic socialization practice. The way you do this is you go to malls and stores or shops, and you just talk to clerks and to cashiers. Go to an empty mall where it's not busy, and just spend a few hours trying to chat up the mall clerks at the department store. It might be an old lady. She might be 60 years old. Just chat with her, non-sexually, of course. You're just going to chat with her, find out about her life, try to make the conversation interesting rather than just boring, and just get to know her. Socialize with her. See how long you can keep the conversation going. You might even make her feel good about her day. Give her a compliment. Tell her you like how she dresses, or you like her smile, or something like that, and just see how far you can make it go. As a store clerk, she's basically obligated to talk to you. So, start this way. Do that for a month if you need to, in order to get socially comfortable enough that you can actually start to go out to bars and clubs and do something more with sexual intent behind it, with younger girls that you're actually attracted to. Also, when you're at the grocery store and you're checking out, start chatting up the cashier there. See if you can make her talk about herself, make her laugh. It could be guys too. I'm not saying necessarily just girls. You can do it with guys. If it's a guy clerk, talk to the guy clerk. Find out about him. Try to make a conversation going. Talk to strangers. If you're in a taxi, talk to the taxi driver. If you're in an airport, talk to the guy sitting next to you. You can actually go to parks sit on a park bench near somebody, near a stranger, just strike up a conversation. Try this first. You can also go to meetup groups, use meetup.com to find local meetup groups and just start socializing with people who are interested in similar things to you. Realistically, you're going to need this before you, if you're a total noob and you're really deficient in your socializing and you're very introverted and have social anxiety, you're going to need to start here before you start to get into more romantic sorts of socializing. Also, what really helps is to find a few good wingmen using the internet, forums, and so forth. Find a few good wingmen who can, A, demonstrate how to do approaching. You can watch them doing it. This is very helpful. And B, they can give you that emotional support. And when you're feeling down or you don't know what to do, they can give you some advice if they're more experienced than you. And the other thing you can try here, if you're extremely shy, is, and this is actually how I started, the first time I went to a club in my entire life, I went there and I didn't have any intentions of actually talking to girls per se. I just went there to dance. I literally went to the club. I didn't drink. The music was playing and I just danced for like 2 or 3 hours by myself on the dance floor. You know, there's a bunch of people around me, but I wasn't there with friends or anybody. And I just danced and I enjoyed the music and I had fun. And actually what happened was that I was in such a good state after 2 hours of dancing. I was covered in sweat from dancing, really enjoying the music, feeling good in my body. And then what happened was that a girl approached me. She started dancing with me just because I was having so much fun by myself dancing. And she actually kissed me. Just out of the blue. I didn't do any game on her. I didn't even try. I didn't even go to the club with that intention. The reason that worked is because I was in such a good state. This shows you the power of state and the power of actually enjoying what you're doing. So make sure when you're going out, you're actually enjoying the process as much as possible. Now, how long does it take to get results? Well, if by results you mean sex, then like I said earlier in part 1, it took me about 450 approaches to get my first lay from, I was doing both night game and day game at that time. Most of those approaches were night game, but this first result came from day game. So that's what it took me. That's probably what it would take most newbies. It takes about 5 to 10,000 approaches to get good and consistent. If you're doing 20 approaches a day times 3 days a week times 4 weeks, that's 240 approaches a month or 2,880 approaches in a year. That's a really good number. Aim for that. Aim for 20 approaches, 3 nights a week, 4 weeks a month for an entire year. If you can manage that, that's almost 3,000 approaches in a year. That's a lot. It's going to be very difficult for that first year, but once you get past that first year, now you're going to develop a little bit of decent game and some nice self-confidence. You're going to shatter many of your limiting beliefs, and you're going to get some results. Maybe you'll get 3 to 10 lays out of those 3,000 approaches. And you should be happy with that. That's a pretty good result. Now, it's going to take an enormous amount of work. It's going to be very difficult. And you're still not going to be very consistent by the end of that year, but you will have a solid enough understanding of how game works, and you're going to know all of your own deficiencies and where you got to work up to and what your sticking points are. You're going to know all of that by the end of that year. And then you're going to be in a nice position to keep going and keep growing. And then, you know, as you work up to 5,000 to 10,000 approaches, that's where you're going to start to develop some serious consistency. And then that's where the serious results come, I would say, at the 10,000 approach mark, if you get there. But very few guys will get there because it just requires so much work. But if you do, the payoff will be enormous. So I recommend you go out 2 to 4 nights a week if you can, or move to a city where that's possible. Consistency here is key. Find places with lots of women. Be careful about watching and listening to too much theory. There's a lot of pickup theory online, and you can get lost in thousands of hours of listening to theory. I've basically given you all the theory you need for now. Start going out and approaching based on just these 3 episodes that are going to be part of this series. When it comes to drinking, I recommend you don't drink at all. Completely avoid it. It's unhealthy. It'll ruin your brain. It'll ruin your liver, ruin your health. It'll cost you thousands of dollars in the end. And it basically gains you nothing, and it's not going to improve your game. In fact, it's going to lose you learning opportunities because you're going to be sloppy with your game when you're drunk. And you're also not going to retain reference experience and memories as well when you're drunk. It's completely unnecessary. So don't drink. I never drank, so it's definitely doable. Try to enjoy the steep learning curve rather than wishing it away. Rather than wishing this whole process to be easy, take on the challenge of the steep learning curve and use it to just make yourself a stronger man. At the end of your nights, every night, analyze your sets and ask yourself what went well, what went poorly, and what did you learn? What new distinctions did you make that night? Do this every single night for years, and your game will blossom and you will create very fine and very accurate distinctions. And then this is ultimately how you learn. See my episode called Learning Equals Making Distinctions. That episode actually is very crucial for helping you to learn game, or really anything, but especially game. Try to work on one sticking point every single night. For example, if you're going out tonight, work on your eye contact, or work on squaring up, or work on physical escalation, or work on, push-pull verbal techniques, or work on being more funny, or work on being more comfortable and relaxed in your body, or work on making observational openers. So you observe the girl and you make an opener based on what you observed about her. And keep practicing that. And usually what I would do is I would even stick for an entire week or an entire month on one single sticking point. For example, when it comes to physical escalation, that would probably require an entire month of going out every single day for a month, just working on physical escalation to really lock that one in. If you're talking about eye contact, at least for a few weeks, you got to be every single night working on eye contact the whole night. Just that, to lock that one in. And then just keep doing that week by week by week with different sticking points until you develop some sort of, solid game. It's important also that you distinguish between attraction versus relationships. So everything I'm talking about in this series called How to Get Laid is basically what I would call attraction. This is not relationship advice. And how you act and the game that you use to get attraction is not something you got to be running inside of a relationship. People get this wrong. So what I mean by the attraction is basically I'm talking about from the point where you meet her to the point where you sleep with her the first time. That entire thing I'm going to call like the attraction phase of your interaction with a woman. So this attraction phase includes the attraction, the rapport, and the seduction, all the way up to first sex. Then after first sex, and then really multiple times of sex, then it starts to get into relationship territory. There is no relationship without sex. So once she has sex with you, the entire dynamic flips around. Because the problem, before she has sex with you, she's not invested in you at all. She has no loyalty to you at all. She will likely not return your phone calls or your texts. She doesn't care about you at all, basically, until sex. Once sex happens, now she's invested in you. Now she cares. Now you can convert that into a girlfriend situation, into a real relationship, especially after you have sex with her multiple times. Once that happens, you don't need to keep running some sort of crazy, elaborate game on her. You can relax and chill out a little bit and just kind of trust that things will go fine. And just there, then we transition into relationship advice. Relationship advice is a whole different can of worms. I'm going to have videos specifically on relationship advice and how to handle that stuff. There's a totally different set of challenges there that have nothing to do with game, pretty much. The reason we got to run game is to spark her emotions, because otherwise she's too logical to have sex with you. Women do not have sex based on logic. They have sex based on emotions. So even though you could be an amazing guy, you could even want to pay for her. You could even want to support her. You could even want to have children with her. You could want to be the best boyfriend in the world to her, but none of that matters to her unless you stimulate her emotions enough for her to have sex with you. And then she's invested. Until then, she's not invested in you. So to do that, we got to get you out of your logical head, and we got to get you approaching, and we got to get you physically escalating and taking the lead and being assertive and having strong eye contact and good vocal tonality and good body posture and some flirting skills and knowing how to lead and how to pull and how to close, all these things. And then you can have your relationship, and in the relationship, you can have love and all this beautiful stuff, romance. Yes, relationships are awesome. I'm not against relationships at all, but to have that relationship, first, you got to attract the girl. All right, that's it for part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. In part 3, I'm going to talk about more about the hook point, how to tell when the hook point is reached, how quickly you can reach the hook point, and how to tell if she's attracted to you. I'm also going to talk about the top 25 principles of game. It's a very important list. I'm also going to talk about a list of the top 30 biggest newbie mistakes that newbies make. I'm going to talk about how to not run out of things to say. That's a big problem that many guys face. Other miscellaneous tips, and I'm going to finish with talking about the ethics of pickup and how to avoid some of the toxic aspects of the pickup community that I've been critical about in the past, and how to avoid abusing this newfound power that these skills will grant you. All right, that's it. The last thing I want to mention here is my life purpose course. If you are going to be working on game seriously, you also should think about finding your sense of life purpose. That's what my life purpose course is about. It's over 25 hours of exclusive content that you don't find on my free channel that focuses specifically, very practically, on how to help you to find your sense of life purpose and align your career with that and really your entire life with that. It's like your life without a life purpose is like you're like a slug with no spine. And then with the life purpose, you develop a spine, you develop a sort of an arc, a sort of a overarching structure to your whole life that orients you. And having a sense of life purpose is extremely attractive to women. When a man has this kind of life purpose, and your life purpose is the thing that creates endless motivation that you use for building your business, your finances, your career, your health, and your relationships, and for developing game. It's not enough just to be doing personal development piecemeal, like, oh, I'm going to improve a little bit of my muscles, and I'm going to improve a little bit of my nutrition, and I'm going to improve a little bit of my game. It's like, no, you want to have an overarching sort of narrative and direction to your entire life, a really big picture perspective for your entire life, and the life purpose course helps you to do that. So I recommend that as you're learning game, you're also developing your sense of life purpose. And this sense of life purpose is what gives you that solidity, that strength, that confidence, that clarity of what you want in life. Women love this. This is ultimately the deep inner game you need to be attractive to women, because what women are looking for is that sense of stability, a man who knows what he wants, who has values and principles that he follows, a man who's like a rock, grounded. And then she can orbit around that. The feminine energy can wrap itself around that, and that produces a beautiful dynamic. But it takes a lot of work to find your life purpose and to align with your life purpose. And there's a lot of ways you can screw it up. So the life purpose course, check that out. It basically takes you step by step through the principles and the techniques and the process that I use to find my life purpose and to use that to basically build out my entire life and to have motivation for all the stuff that I do and that I teach.